Americans. This meeting is taking place on Nadikana, which is the uncedial traditional homelands of the Abenaki, Pennacook, and Wabanaki people, past and present. We acknowledge with honor, with gratitude, the land, waterways, living beings, and the Abenaki, the people who have stewarded Nadikana throughout the generations. This brings us to agenda item number 4, which is public hearings, which is scheduled for this evening. First, this evening's public hearing scheduled is ordinance number 124, supplemental appropriation of additional state adequacy grant funding for the school department. If anyone wishes to speak in favor or against ordinance number 124, supplemental appropriations of additional state adequacy grant funding for the school department, please come forward, state your name, your address, and the ward you live in if you have that applicable information. Good evening and welcome. Looks like you're number 2.
Oh, sorry to cut you off. Okay. Hi there. I'm Barbara Wentworth, 73 Hawthorne Circle, and Ward 2 School Board Representative. Hello. He's sitting in my seat, so I'll wait for a second for Mr. Vincent. No worries. Glad you're here. I anticipate that you all will vote to approve the full adequacy aid funding from the state that is intended for our schools. As communicated at the City Finance Committee meeting earlier this month, the City Council has the bottom line authority and cannot appropriate where the SAU allot these funds. However, tonight, Katie and Lou will do an amazing job detailing and doing a presentation on plans for this money. It's incredibly appreciated, I'm sure, by the City Council, but also those of us on the school board. Let's build towards an environment in which all of our students are provided for and can achieve. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak in favor or against ordinance number 124? Good evening and welcome.
Hi, Dr. Bridget Jameson, 163 Old Rochester Road, Ward 3. Background information for those who don't know me, I am in full support of this. I am a school psychologist in multiple districts. I'm also a teacher in Somersworth, about 5 years ago now, but for 5 years. We have amazing schools, and your staff work incredibly hard to do what they do with I would say, limited funding. I hope I have misunderstood the purpose of this, and this is a procedural, but regardless, I'm going to speak to it. I do need the council to understand that the reason that you do not have more turnover in your schools, despite the pay gaps, right, between here and other Seacoast schools, is because you have a city and community that are dedicated to the teachers in the schools, and the teachers know that. And I'm concerned that if you don't forward the funds, that is not the message that you are sending. I would encourage you to disperse the state adequacy aid to the school board in the full amount of $1.9 million. New Hampshire is last in the nation in adequacy aid funding. I understand some of you, and I totally get it, may view it as already having been funded in the budget, but you do need to know from someone who is on the ground in education, and it is multiple places, that education in the state is really not equivalent. I know that's a tough pill to swallow for some of us. It's not critically. Again, people are doing the best they can with what they have. But I can tell you from talking to my friends, the things that they are concerned about as teachers is not their salary. It is not the kids. They adore the kids. It's things like tissues. It's things like working clocks. They have to use field trip funds for kids who can't afford it out of their own budgets that the PTA reimburses. And sub pay is low so that when there are not subs, right, students get split among other classrooms. My argument in general is less about the dollar amount than it is about the principle, right? If the state is willing to increase adequacy aid, we need to say, thank you. It is not anywhere near enough, right? The taxes are ridiculous. We need to continue to do that and take that money. I am concerned that if you do not forward the money to the schools, that you are essentially letting the state off the hook. And that's the impression that they are going to get. And I think that summarizes my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak in favor or against ordinance number 124? Good evening and welcome.
Good evening. Thank you. Maggie Larson, 16 Hamilton Street. I'm a parent, community member, and the Somersworth School Board Chair. City councilors, I'm here tonight asking you to vote yes on releasing the full amount of the adequacy aid to the school district as it was intended to be. A well-funded school system is not just an investment in education, it's an investment in the very heart and soul of our community. It has the power to draw businesses, enhance property values, and instill a profound sense of pride in our beloved city. Let me provide you with some crucial context. Over the last 3 years, our school district has returned over $3.5 million to the city in the form of unexpected funds at the end of our fiscal year. We are grateful for an incredibly adept central office staff and our district administrators for their hard work in managing the school budget so well. These changes in the adequacy aid were not arbitrary. The legislative body instituted them based on a formula that includes the increases in the base amount for each student, special education, English language learners, students navigating poverty, and equalized property values. The school budget committee unanimously accepted them. Our dedicated school administrators embraced them. The school board, with unanimous agreement, endorsed this path, and your finance committee voted in support of the full appropriation to council tonight. Per City Charter 7.7 from the November 2009 referendum, a 2/3 majority of the council is required to designate the money as appropriated. This money is coming from the state. It's not direct from local taxpayers. If you use this to offset taxes, there could be a significant spike next year, as this is not one-time money and it will be granted in our 24-25 school budget. In a world filled with increasing division and uncertainty, supporting adequacy funds for a school district is an opportunity to all come together, to bridge gaps and to champion education. Our students and staff deserve our unwavering collective support. Let us be remembered for our courage and compassion. Let our legacy be one of investment in education and a commitment to the growth of the next generation. I implore you, city councilors, to please vote in favor of releasing the full amount of adequacy aid to our school district. And in doing so, cast a resounding vote for our future, for unity, and for the enduring success of our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak in favor or against ordinance number 124? Good evening and welcome. I want to just, there you go.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, yeah, great.
Hi, my name is Nina Souza. I'm currently an 8th grader at the middle school. I wanted to attend tonight's meeting so that I can represent all of the students of Somersworth. Tonight's meeting is about how the state gave the school district $1.9 million so that we can fix our schools, make our schools safer, and be able to purchase necessary items that we need. Have any of you been in our school and had the opportunity to walk in our halls? Here are some examples of problems in the school. In the middle school, when the fire alarms go off, you can't hear them when you are in the classrooms, only when you are in the hallways. This is a huge safety issue. In the middle school, the girls' locker room has ceiling panels that are missing because the ceiling leaks and they got ruined. The cafeteria in the middle school ceiling also leaks. It was actually leaking last Thursday. The flags in the cafeteria that are hanging from the ceiling are brown, all stained from water damage. The high school library bookshelves that are along the wall was covered with trash bags because when it rains, the ceiling leaks so that it doesn't damage all the books. The high school has buckets in the hallways when it rains out because the roof leaks. These are just a few things that are wrong with the school, but could also cause problems to the staff and students of their healths. Now, let's talk about the safety in our schools. We need to increase the safety all like at front entrances, and we need to add another SRO. There are 1,386 students in 4 schools, and we only have 1 SRO. Our current SRO does an amazing job trying to keep all of the students and staff safe, but this is just too much for one person. We should not be afraid and should feel safe when attending school every day. I could go on and on with so many things, but I will end it like this. These are important years of our lives, and I am proud to be a student of Somersworth Schools. We do have so many things to fix. We will get there eventually. So when you are ready to make your decision to release all the funds, remember how important all the staff and students of Somersworth. Let's make this a more enjoyable environment for us, a safer environment for us, and let's get all necessary things that we need to get through our school years. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak in favor or against ordinance number 124? Good evening and welcome.
I do. My name is Louis Felice. I live at 104 West High Street, Ward 2. This is my son, Remiel Felice. I'm going to read it so I don't get sidetracked here. Good evening. I, like other parents that are here and at home watching, would like to ask the City Council the question, why? We all know that there have been serious changes and adjustments in the last months and years to the school board. I, like most of the parents, are extremely happy with these changes. These changes should not be affecting the schools or our children based on personal opinions. So with that being said, why does the City Council want to keep $1.9 million in funds that the state is providing for the schools and not give it to the school for which it was intended? These funds can support the kids who need it now and for years to come. These kids are already behind due to COVID. The teachers are at their mental max capacity due to the economic fall. The funds can support kids who need it now. The city can wait. These kids need it. The school needs the funds for the infrastructure, staffing, education, technology for classrooms, building updates, and even school meals to feed the hungry kids that go without a meal in our schools every day, or the ones that the school meal is their only meal sometimes and they can't even afford that. The children need it. The city has other funds allocated for their projects. Our kids need to thrive, but most importantly, we need to help the lacking special education department. The way that the special education department is lacking is quite frankly sad compared to other towns. The training is not there for our teachers to properly do their job. The resources are scarce and subpar. I removed my son from the middle school and placed him at John Power School here in Somersworth for a better education and a second chance at his future. Despite him receiving a better education, I, along with his mother, became bad parents for removing him from the social setting of being around his friends. Social interaction with friends is needed. We all went through COVID, and there are very few kids that thrive from being separated. They learn from each other as well, and they can lean on each other when needed. My plan was to have him start the freshman year back in the school environment to not deprive him from the experience that the majority of us had. But in doing so, feeling confident enough that the school will be receiving more resources and training that they desperately need, thus helping his mental and emotional health at such a young, impressionable age. I do not want my child to feel left out or different because he is not part of the whole at this important stage of his young life, but ultimately his education and future are my first priority. He cannot advocate for himself, so that's why I'm standing here in front of you. I care and I'm concerned for all the children that need these services and of course hope they will receive what is rightfully owed to them. So again, City Council, we the parents would like to know why. Why do you want to keep the funds that our children require for their continued growth and development? Hope to hear from you soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak in favor or against ordinance number 124? Good evening and welcome.
Good evening, Riona Kaur, 60 Maple Street. I'm here to ask to release the funds to the schools. I lived here for 35 years. I now have 3 children, 9, 6, and 4, living in Somersworth. I teach my kids every day to make the right decision. Eventually, when they're old enough, when they're making life-altering decisions, I will hope to guide them to leave their ego at the door. That's how you make the right decision. I've learned to do this effectively, and it's hard. It sure is. Today, I urge you to leave your ego at the door. The children who are in school right now, age 9, my son, he has been through enough. He's been through trauma with the pandemic, gun violence, with school administration changing, with even the school system changing years back. This is a product of the environment. It's not at fault for anyone else. It's our responsibility to give them the tools to succeed because they are our bright future. We're given the chance to allow Somersworth schools to have the funding so our kids don't have to attempt to survive anymore. They need the chance to thrive. These funds can be a chance for prevention, a chance for our kids to have positive, healthy outcomes in our schooling. Although I cannot control how the funding is going to be spent, I know that the risk is high by not allowing our children a chance. This only benefits them. By council not allowing our children in schools the chance, your decision will directly impact the data. Will you take the chance to be held accountable for each child not given the chance to succeed with the funding? Are you willing to be liable for those graduation rates, suicide rates, and so forth? These kids have been through enough. Let's give them the funding to invest in the opportunity to succeed, for them to thrive rather than survive. I ask you to take your ego out of the decision, do a risk assessment, and make the right choice for our children's future. I do not want my children to resent the leaders in the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak in favor or against ordinance number 124? Good evening and welcome.
Good evening. My name is Nikki Knievi, and I live on 6 Squire Drive. For those of you that don't know me, I've been an elementary school teacher at Maplewood for the past 17 years. I've also lived in town for the last 11. My husband, Patrick, is a lifelong resident as well. When I first came to Somersworth, I remember being impressed with the grit and determination of everyone I met. Over my career, I've had opportunities to teach elsewhere, and I've always turned those opportunities down. When my husband and I were first able to purchase a house, we knew Somersworth was where we wanted to raise our family. When we were fortunate enough to upgrade and move to a larger home, Somersworth was the only town I told the realtor to look at. I think it's safe to say I believe in this city. I believe in my colleagues, and I believe in the children of Somersworth. That's why I couldn't quite believe what I was hearing when I first found out that the City Council was considering taking $1.9 million away from our schools. New Hampshire is already 50th in the nation in school funding to local districts. Why on earth would we take that small pittance of money that they send our way and move it out of the schools? I currently have 3 children in school here, 1 in high school, 1 in middle, and 1 at Maplewood. They've all attended since kindergarten. In their time at school, they have been taught, loved, and cared for by some of the hardest working people I have ever met. They've been given opportunities I could have only dreamt of when I was in school. I understand our taxes are high. I live here, I pay them too. But what better can we spend our money on than the future of our city? Isn't that our motto? Proud past, bright future? I'm not sure how the future can be bright when we don't see education in our city's schools as the most worthy place for this money, especially since that's what the state intended. Surrounding towns have already allocated this money to their schools. We have so much more we need to do for the children of this city. Leaking roofs and lack of special education services and supplies is no way to treat our youngest citizens. I urge you to please do the right thing and allocate this money to the schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak in favor or against ordinance number 124? Good evening and welcome.
Good evening. I'm Louise White. I live at 10 Nash Parkway. I'm in Ward 4. I'm also a teacher at Somersworth High School. I'm asking you guys to release the funds back to the schools. The funds that you release will not affect me directly. It will not affect my paycheck. It will not affect what I'm able to do in my program in my classroom. It will affect whether or not my students get a ride home at the end of the day if they decide to stay late and stay for homework club or get additional help. I can stand in front of a room of teenagers and talk with no problem, get in front of you guys, and I get a little nervous. But it will matter whether or not we have a late bus for our students to be able to get home. And some of our students, despite our 10 square miles, have a significant walk home, and as we get darker and colder, we need them to be safe and get that ride home. I guess you've heard that it leaks in the high school. It doesn't just leak, it pours. It has rained so hard that it goes all the way down, like Niagara Falls, goes into the first floor from the second. There are leaks over stairwells that are dangerous. The adequacy funding could help complete the roof project and make it so that our roof could be completely fixed. Your adequacy funding is super important to our special ed students in ways we don't see every day. But we know how important it is because we know how much it costs and how valuable it is for kids to have access. You have a really simple decision, really, because I'm a taxpayer too, and you putting that back in the basket for the tax dollars isn't going to affect me either. It's a couple dollars back to me. But it does affect the way that my students, some of whom are here right now, live their lives day to day. And you have a big responsibility for a simple thing, and I ask you to do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak in favor or against ordinance number 124? Good evening and welcome.
Hi guys. Good evening, counselors and mayor. My name is Carrie Clark, 59 Franklin Street, Somersworth School Board at large. Thank you for holding this public meeting. As you can see, people came out. I'm super proud of some of our students that came up and spoke. That's amazing. I did email each and every one of you, but I don't think you received it. I did hear that maybe you don't have emails on the website for people to reach out to you for. So I'm not sure how we can, that's for a later date. So I spoke to several of you in person about this adequacy funds, and then you mentioned to me this would negatively affect the taxpayers in this community as to why we would not give it to the schools and why you would hold it away. And I just wanted to remind you of like a committee meeting back in September 2023. Dave, oh, not 2023. Let's see. Let me go back. Look at my notes. Oh, it was back in September 2023. Dave, you said, it's not up to this committee of the city council to analyze each line item, and that their task is to decide the bottom line amount. So I'm just asking that, it's great, right? So I'm just asking that you guys please give the full amount to the school so we can use it for what we need it for. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak in favor or against ordinance number 124? Good evening and welcome.
Hi, my name is Mike Davidson. I live on Old Rochester Road in Ward 3. Just real quick, the fact of the matter is the state provided this money to Somersworth for the schools. And though the city does have its discretion regarding where that money is used, at the end of the day, it belongs at the schools. The city cannot in one breath decry the adequacy funding situation in the state of New Hampshire or throughout most of the world, the nation. And then in the next breath, when that money does finally show up, turn around and spend it on sidewalks or a fire truck or something else like that. The impact that this funding may have on the mill rate, and that's a very big may, in my opinion, is pretty much inconsequential to most families, looking at between $50 and $150, depending on the value of your home. Much of that impact will actually be passed on to landlords, who will certainly not pass that $150 savings on to their tenants. I'm certain that the proposition to route this funding to the general fund rather than to the schools is not politically motivated in any way. And so I urge the city council to move this money onwards to the schools where it belongs. 99% of the time, I feel like I can trust my elected officials to do their jobs appropriately and correctly, but I have my doubts today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak in favor or against ordinance number 124? Anyone else wish to speak in favor or against ordinance number 124? Good evening and welcome.
Paul Goodwin, 21 Lennon Street, Somersworth resident, and also candidate for City Council at large. I actually came here to speak to another issue tonight, but I think it's very apparent where the community stands and where their values are and where our values as a council, or your values as a council, should be in ensuring that the adequacy funds go to where they are needed most, where they're valued most, where they're going to have the most impact on this community, and where they were intended from the state to go, which is to the school. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak in favor or against ordinance number 124? Good evening and welcome.
Hi, my name is Marcy Stone. I live at 13 Bork Street, and I have 2 kiddos in Maplewood. I'm also a local coordinator for the End 68 Hours of Hunger group here. And I wasn't planning on speaking, thus my attire, but as I listen to everybody speak, I just continue to feel appalled and embarrassed that we're even having this discussion. If you've set foot in our schools and you've seen the services that my predecessors up here have spoken about, you know that we need this funding, and the fact that this is a conversation is embarrassing. And 68 Hours of Hunger, our numbers have doubled this year. We're serving almost 150 kids every weekend who can't afford weekend meals. you better believe that we need the money for an array of services, but certainly to help kids at least buy school lunches. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak in favor or against ordinance number 124? Anyone else wish to speak in favor or against ordinance number 124? Good evening and welcome.
Evening. My name is Mike Godzik. I live at 5 Flynn Street, Ward 1. I've been a resident of Somersworth for 12 years? 12 years this December. I'm sure many of you see me around town. I volunteered in our school system as a para for 6 months. I have 2 children studying the carpet of the floor. Hazel, who's 12, Lincoln, who's 14. Both of them are in the school system on band, soccer. I have volunteered with fundraisers. My wife has done bake sales, you name it. We're in the school system. I highly would like this money to be allocated for our schools. Initially, I was like, oh, well, we can fix the sprinkler heads in the soccer field, new band uniforms, but it's apparent that we have leaky roofs, extra SRO officers being asked for. So the schools are part of our city, so I understand the point of view that some of the board members want to give the money back to the city, but at the same time, our school is part of our city. So, I mean, I don't look at it as a win-lose situation. It's win-win if we give it to the city, school. And that's all I really have to say. But thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak in favor or against ordinance number 124? Anyone else wish to speak in favor or against ordinance number 124? I will close the public hearing on ordinance number 124 and open the public hearing on ordinance number 224 to amend Chapter 19, Zoning, Section 4, Use Regulations, Section 33, Solar, and Section 4, Table 4.A.6, Use of Solar. Anyone wish to speak in favor or against ordinance number 224? Anyone wish to speak in favor or against ordinance number 224? None being so, I'll close the public hearing on ordinance number 224. That brings us to agenda item number 5, which is comments by visitors. The Somersworth City Council and Mayor's Office welcome all visitors and encourage you to voice your opinion and views at the City Council meetings. In accordance with Council Rule 7C, a time limit of 5 minutes per person shall be in effect unless the Council wishes to suspend the rules. The Speaker shall not enter into any debate with any person, the Mayor, Council members, City Manager, or Department heads. This time we welcome comments by visitors. Please come forward, state your name, your address, and the ward you live in if you have that applicable information. Any comments by visitors this evening? Welcome back.
Thank you. Good evening. Paul Goodwin, 21 Linden Street, lifelong resident, advocate for downtown revitalization, volunteer, etc. You guys know the bit. I'm before you this evening to talk to a new agenda item on the modification for the historic district. Forgive me, I don't remember the what's called on your agenda because it's written referring to the chapter and subchapter section, which are unintelligible to anyone other than the 20 people in town that know what section 19.3D mean. So you have to go to the city manager's report to determine what the actual agenda contains. A note for future. But I'm not entirely sure what the intent behind this new business is, but I have questions, and I'm generally concerned around the process. And I like to think of the counterfactual. If we were to propose a new historic district, what would the standard for which expanding that district look like? I suspect council would refer to Chapter 19, which is the section of our ordinances that empower and delegate the HDC to protect and inventory our historical resources. And through Chapter 19, HDC has the authority to identify those resources for historical and cultural significance. And they actually are also empowered to make recommendations to the council on the designation, the geographic designation of that district based on those characteristics. They would have to demonstrate that the buildings they were seeking to contribute in an expansion were contributing structures to the district. The burden of proof would be on them to demonstrate that those buildings were culturally and historically significant for the protection that they would be seeking and the authority to review applications in those areas. I would ask that the same standard be applied for removing sections from the district. Are the areas that are proposed to be removed contributing historically or culturally? Has that assessment been done? Do we have evidence that these structures are no longer contributing? I would also suggest that if we were expanding the district, there would be some level of community engagement. We would not impose a new historical district on a new neighborhood in town or another neighborhood in town without some sort of community process to support that action. The residents and property owners and businesses in the areas affected by the proposal obviously have the same opportunity I do tonight to come before you and speak, but that is not the same as the city being proactive and going out to them and saying, hey, we think there's a change here that could be beneficial for whatever our intent is. We want your feedback because your property is affected, your community is affected. That's an important step. And I think the third thing we would assess is, does this change align with our master plan and the vision that we have set out for ourselves in the future? And I think the process and outcome here matters. In the simplest of ways, removing these areas from the district could remove incentives or opportunities for these homeowners or property owners to improve their properties. Under Chapter 31, which is our community revitalization tax relief incentive, they're entitled up to 4 additional years of tax relief for substantial improvements for historical rehabilitation within a district. So by removing these areas from the district under our current Chapter 31 language, you are also removing these property owners' ability for up to an additional 4 years of tax relief for substantial rehabilitation. But I think the more important question here is one that's harder to qualify around the process. And that the community must be engaged, because this is a significant action that could erode community trust if not done properly. I've heard many people, many of you, talk about the horrors of urban renewal. Not only did that process destroy our physical history and heritage, but it undermined the trust our community had in the planning and development process. And I would argue that we are still working to build back that trust. So I encourage you to think carefully around the process of doing this. I'm not here to say I oppose changes to the historic district. I think conversations around what is merited to be in and out are healthy, but the manner in which we go about actually adjusting the district and its authority is important. I would also add in closing that the root of this, the intent of this, or what we might be going for in this action might actually better be addressed in the regulations of the HDC itself, the authority and decisions in which they have to make their actions, and not in the physical boundary of the district. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments by visitors? Any further comments by visitors this evening? Any further comments by visitors? None being so, that'll bring us to agenda item number 6, which is the consent calendar. Chair will obtain a motion in regards to the consent calendar. Councilor Austin.
I'll move approval of the consent calendar as submitted.
Councilor Austin moves that the consent calendar be approved as submitted, seconded by Councilor Pepin. The question before the council is on the approval of the consent calendar. All those in favor, please state by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it, and the consent calendar is adopted. Brings us to agenda item number 7, which is comments by councilors. Any comments by councilors this evening? Councilor Witham.
Thank you. Appreciate the resident comment about the zoning ordinance amendment that I proposed with regard to reducing the size of the historic district here in the city. Was rather transparent at our last meeting at my intent behind that was to generate serious conversation around the historic district. Mission accomplished, right? So we get very few public comment on much of anything here, never mind the historic district. We've now had several people that have commented on it, including here tonight. It's an important conversation for the community to have. As I said at the last meeting, although I am introducing this ordinance change, I don't know if I would vote for it. I'm in a fact-finding mode now. The public comment is helpful in my fact-finding. I spent time with a member of the Historic District yesterday touring a good part of the Historic District. It was sort of like Gilligan's Island. It was like a 3-hour tour, right? Some of you get that, some of you don't, right? That's an age thing. It's an important conversation to have. And by way of process, and yeah, maybe our ordinance could be listed out a little bit clearer in the agenda. Won't debate that. It gets introduced tonight. We then schedule a public hearing, and it would be up for action at the next meeting if we so choose. We could put that off for many meetings. It could be a matter of months before we act on it. I was telling Councilor Girding here this evening, my intent was to go to the HDC this Wednesday night with the maps and share my ordinance revision with them, hoping to get more feedback from that group as a whole. After it gets introduced tonight in first reading, I suppose it could get referred to a committee for further action. I welcome that. I welcome the further community conversation around it. It's important. Whether or not we change it, we revise the regulations, remains to be seen. But it's a conversation we need to have, and you don't have those conversations unless you propose bold legislative changes, which is what I've done here. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments by councilors? Any further comments by councilors this evening? Councilor Girding.
Thank you, Your Honor. I will say, 3-hour tour wouldn't be the worst thing to get stranded on the hilltop, though. Could be worse. In regards to that specific ordinance change that's coming forward, I do plan to request after its first reading that it go to the Economic Development Committee, so I did want to just make that clear. I'll make that request at the time. I also want to let folks know, due to my job as a teacher in the school system, I will be recusing myself from tonight's vote on the supplemental appropriation, and will save my own personal comments in regards to that until closing comments. So if folks want to hear those, you're welcome to stay. If not, I understand.
Any further comments by councilors? Councilor Pepin and then Councilor Gibson. Councilor Pepin.
Yeah, I usually use this as closing comments, but I know after we do the vote, probably most of you people will be gone. I hate the impression that people get that we're trying to keep the money here. This is a process that is brought in front of us. The money goes to general funds. That money can't be released unless it comes to the city council. It has to be requested from the school department first to come to us. And then if we need to ask questions so the public knows what it is. If there may be an impact onto the tax for next year or whatever, that needs to be discussed and brought out to the public, to you and every voter that's out there. So it's a process. I've kind of feel that some people have come in here with the predetermined notion that we want to keep the money, and that's not necessarily the case. We're here to discuss if it should be appropriated, if it shouldn't be, what the impact is on the city and what the impact is on the taxpayers. So I wanted to get that out before we vote on it, because I'm sure most of you people will be gone by the end of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Gibson.
Councilor Pepin beat me to the punch. Pretty much what he said was what I was going to say. I don't know where the misinformation came from that the city council was looking to grab this money and keep it. But that seems to be the impression that a number of people here have. I spent 14 years on the school board. Several other members have been on the school board as well. We all know what the schools need. We know that state funding has been inadequate for any number of years. But I would like to remind people that when the original shortfall for the schools came through during the budget cycle, the city council did step up and fund that shortfall. You know, so we're not trying to take money away from the schools, but we do have a job to do, which is to look at this money that comes in, that it's our responsibility to decide how it gets used. and whether we give some or all of it, return some or all of it to the school department is what the point of public debate and comment is about. So we'll see what happens.
Further comments by councilors. Councilor Vincent.
Thank you, Your Honor. You know, when I hear some of the discussion that goes on around the leaking roofs and so forth, I almost feel like, wow, the school system's giving themselves a black eye. Why wasn't the funds put in to fix the leaking roof then? Maybe it was. Maybe we don't have the bottom line on how you spend the money. The school system does. So I get a little heated when I listen to leaking roofs. And I know that the school has a wonderful maintenance program. I just don't know why this wasn't addressed. And now it comes up when there's a little bit more adequacy money left. I also look at it like this. The school comes to the city with their proposal, and we basically give what the school wants. I mean, since the last administration, superintendent, was there, they came before the council, and we had really good rapport with them. They knew that coming in and asking for $2 million wasn't going to work, so then there wasn't that battle. So they tried to get and do as much as they could to make it so we didn't have to make cuts. And I don't know if my recollection is correct, but I don't think that this school board has cut any request since I've been on it for 6 years. I think we've funded every single thing that the school wanted. So I look at this money as like this. We give the school what they want. This money is a little extra, so if we kept an extra, no, I don't mean keep all of it, but I mean if we kept some of the money, it's going to go to the school the next year. So please, please bear with us because this definitely is a process. And I'm not against the school. And if you have a leaking roof, I certainly want to fund it to have it fixed. Thank you.
Further comments by councilors. Councilor Cameron.
Yeah, I was going to save mine until the end too, but I think it's appropriate probably now to address what we're all discussing. Base adequacy to fund an adequate education, according to the state, is $3,636 per pupil. This includes the cost of teachers, materials, facilities, transportation, guidance counselor, principal, and technology. The adequacy debate focuses on defining a minimum level of funding needed for every school to teach its students. We have been saying this is not enough just to provide an education. We need to provide an excellent education. To receive this extra money to help provide an excellent education versus an adequate one certainly is a blessing and should be used as such. As this governing body has no say over how the money should be used, I would strongly urge the public to take note carefully as to how the money is allocated. The school board decides how to spend the money, whether it be educational purposes such as honors programs, gifted and talented, arts, language, technology, so on and so forth. Or if it gets used for a marquee signing at the high school, weight room at the middle school, athletic uniforms at the middle and high school, marching band uniforms, to name a few. Or is this usage for special education deficit, secretary position, school health clinic, roof project, necessary things? I would urge you to watch closely how the money gets dispersed and know my intent for its purpose is educating the kids. Thank you.
Further comments by councilors. Councilor Witham.
Point of clarity, we will have an opportunity to debate this when that agenda item comes up. I just don't want to miss my turn.
You are correct, Councilor, and just for further clarification, it is my intent to proceed after comments by councilors without objection from council, seeing how the majority of the people are here for this agenda item, to then proceed to that agenda item immediately. I'm sure most of these people are, citizens are really infatuated with sitting here for the duration of the 45 minutes it would take us to get to that agenda item, including reports from the Finance Committee and Public Works Committee and Public Safety Committee. However, again, without objection from council, we will move immediately to that agenda item if there is no objection. I see no objection, so if you're opposing to make some long comments, councilors, perhaps you can wait one more moment and we will get there. Further comments by councilors? Any further comments by councilors? None being so. So without objection from council, we will move to agenda item number 15, which is agenda item number 15, ordinances, ordinance A, which is ordinance number 124. Is there any objection from council? Without objection from council, chair recognizes the clerk for a second reading on ordinance number 124.
Ordinance number 124, supplemental appropriation of additional state adequacy grant funding for the school department.
Ordinance number 124 have been read a first and second time is open to further amendment. Councilor Witham. No amendment be it offered. The chair will obtain a motion on ordinance number. Is this for an amendment or no amendment be it offered? The chair will obtain a motion on ordinance number 124. Councilor Witham.
Move for its adoption.
Councilor Witham moves the adoption of ordinance number 124, seconded by Councilor Messier. Discussion. Councilor Witham.
Thank you.
Note that Councilor Girding has recused himself.
I do thank my fellow councilors for beginning the conversation around the process. And let me just be very open and transparent, seems to be the word of the evening. I have supported this appropriation since the idea was launched, and I'll clean that statement up because it's not an idea, right? The state of New Hampshire determines its adequacy aid well after our budget has been adopted here in the city. We adopt the budget back in the springtime, and the adequacy aid that the city gives us doesn't arrive until the fall. When we adopt our budget in the spring, there is an estimate that is provided to us by the finance department at the school based upon what they believe to be the case, but it's very much a moving target, and the case this year was a big moving target, but for the better, right? It's been the other way before, right? So we're at least discussing what to do with more money given to us. Isn't that such a problem, right? So procedurally, when that happens, the city council needs to appropriate that supplemental appropriation. We need to appropriate it to the school department budget. If we choose not to appropriate the money to the school department budget, we don't keep that money. If we decide to give them some of the money, we don't keep the leftovers. None of that money would ever be in our control as a city councilor. Never. What it would do late in the budget process is it would offset the tax rate during the tax rate setting process, which happens by the DRA, the Department of Revenue Administration, an arm of state government. They do that tax rate setting in the fall. And if we choose not to give that supplemental appropriation to the school, what we don't give, some, all of it, goes to offset the tax rate during that tax rate setting process. It would never go into the general fund. We could never buy a fire truck with it. We couldn't pave a road with it. We couldn't build a sidewalk with it. Because we don't have that money, right? It either offsets the tax rate or it goes to the school. Those are the two options. And the only reason the city council is involved is because it's a supplemental appropriation, and by law, the supplemental appropriation needs to be acted on by this body. By the way, my understanding is that it requires a 2/3 vote of city council members, not present, but of all of us. So that needs 6 positive votes here this evening. It's not an idea the city dreamt up. It's in our city charter. It's required by law, if you will. So no choices on that matter either. So we're here because it's a process. In my view, a rather straightforward, simple administrative process that shouldn't need much debate, shouldn't need much public comment, right? Because as was stated by a number of speakers here this evening, the money is intended to be used by the school department, so let's let the school department use it. I think it's relatively straightforward. There are a few decisions I make in this council chamber that I think are easy. This isn't one of them. This is as easy as pie. It requires not much thought. But knowing the dynamic at play, I've put some thought into this. You might say, hey, what's in front of you here, Dave? I brought along a couple things here tonight, and it speaks to, are we funding our educational system adequately here in the Hilltop City? and I would scream from the hilltops, which I toured yesterday, loud and clear that no, we don't fund our education system adequately here in Somersworth. I think we do a damn good job with the money we give to the school department, and I applaud the school department, the teachers, the staff. You stretch those dollars well, much better than I could ever, right? And I bring these props here with you to share with you that, so my son graduated from Somersworth High School in 2018. That was pre-COVID, so that's one difference. I'll grant you all that. But during his years at Somersworth High School and Somersworth Middle School, I was a very involved dad as well, involved with the various booster organizations of the programs that he participated with, whether that was baseball, soccer for a little while. He was in the high school band for 3 years, baseball team, all of those things. And the boosters have to raise money. And in the case of sports, it's because we have something here in the Hilltop City known as pay to play. That got implemented long before I ever sat in this seat, long before maybe I even had a child. Somewhere along the way, there was a cut to education, and that cut went to the funding of athletics programs. And the difficulty is when you cut something, you almost never get it back. Almost never. That's true at the city level as well. I hate when we have to cut anything because I think it's going to be a struggle to ever get it back. So the booster organizations exist, right? So they run if you've been to a high school football game this fall, the concession stand at the football game, that's run by the boosters. You may have a player or a band member that comes and knocks at your door to your house selling you a book of coupons for local businesses, I don't know, maybe a bake sale. I stopped and had the high school soccer team wash my car, even though I just left the car wash. I felt it was the right thing to do. They do this to raise money. And what do the boosters pay for? Well, I'll start with this. This is my New Hampshire high school baseball umpire hat. I'm a high school baseball umpire here in the state of New Hampshire. And in 2024, a high school baseball umpire will make $93 a game, right? There are 2 of them on the field, right? So that's $186 a game for a baseball game. Varsity game, it's a little bit less for JV. Who pays for that? Not the school department, the boosters. Why do they have to sell a lot of Roy Remick hamburgers at a football game? Because there aren't 2 of them there. There are 5 officials on a football field at $93 a piece. By the way, if they travel over 40 miles, they get mileage as well. Right? By the way, we lack officials in all sports here in the state. So if you're interested in making a little extra money, it's a real good way to do it. I brought this with me. I think some of you know that my adopt-a spot here in the city is the ball field up at the Noble Pines. My wife will tell you that most people adopt traffic islands, and I think they're too small and boring, so I adopt a baseball field. Spend about 10 hours a week up there, even this time of year, just keeping the field maintained. They require a lot of maintenance. But I brought with me here tonight, this is a can of Game Day spray paint, white in color. That cost about $12 for that can of paint that you use to mark a foul line. I use 2 of those for every game. One for the right field foul line, one for the left field foul line. I also have them in light blue because we have an out-of-play line. I need one for the right field out-of-play line, one for the left field out-of-play line. So by the time you do all the math there, it's about $50 a game to stripe a baseball field. Does the school department pay for that? No. It's paid for by the boosters. So I share that with you to say we have a long way to go before we think we are adequately funding education here in Somersworth. Appropriating this $1.9 million to the school department is not going to address any of this, but it addresses some other needs that might otherwise never be funded in the school department budget. Some may argue, well, geez, our taxpayers should get some tax relief. I'd argue we gave them that back when we developed our budget. I remind all on council that we sat in a circle, where all these folks are here tonight, kind council and school board combined and talked about what do we think the appetite will be of the taxpayer here in the city of Somersworth. And if memory serves me correctly, we hovered around a 96-cent increase for the school department. Even though the tax cap, as we have it here in Somersworth, again, another legally binding document, would have allowed us to increase the tax rate, I think, in excess of $2 this past year. We chose not to do that. We made the cut. We said, no more than 96 cents. So we've already made the cut to the school department budget, and that process happens every year. The school department develops a budget based upon an inkling it gets from us as a city council as to what they think might be palatable. So the cut is made back then. This is an opportunity to address some things that are important, needed, warranted. Will it get us to where we need to be? Heck no. But it moves the ball at least in the right direction. Thank you.
Question for the council is on the adoption of ordinance number 124. Further discussion. Councilor Messier.
Thanks, sir. To me, it's pretty academic. It's additional state adequacy grant. We went through a budget process. It has right here in November, and in November they gave the school 7.2. In September of 23, it's 9.1. So it's 1.9 million difference. That is monies that the school could use. It's not going to salaries. It's going to projects. As some of us well know, these schools need to be taken care of. You have an infrastructure no different than us paving roads or sidewalks. So that's why I will be supporting 1.9 or the amendment to increase the schools. It's that money. It's not going to buy a fire truck, as Councilor Witham expressed. I mean, I just don't get it. It's additional revenue that the state, in their infinite wisdom, which I can't believe, they finally gave us a little extra money to help fund schools and things in the community. So that's my spiel. It's not as eloquent as Councilor Witham, but I'm just a poor white guy.
Question for the council is on the adoption of ordinance number 124. Further discussion. Councilor Austin.
Thank you, Your Honor. I've got to admit, I've had a lot of angst about this whole process, since I first learned it was going to be introduced as a supplemental appropriation. Somebody mentioned tonight about historically how we have railed against the state not providing enough money for the schools, not providing enough money for the schools, not providing enough money for the schools. So here this year, they've given us more money for the schools. Yay for the state. I think that's important, and I think that this money deserves to go back to the school system. What I would, and I realize this comment is going to sound like I want to have some authority over how the money is spent, and that's not how I want this to come out, but it's going to sound that way anyway. I think that I would encourage the school board and its finance committee to take another look at how this money will be spent. You've got about $276,000 of this money that would go to things that would normally be included in a routine operating budget and not dedicated to things like we heard about tonight, like the infrastructure problems at the middle school and high school and things like that that really need to be addressed rather than buying more supplies or things like that. We have no authority to talk about the bottom line, to talk about the line items of how you'll spend that money, but it really disturbs me when you want to take $250,000 and spend it on something that's not significant to the building infrastructure. If we've got leaky roofs and we've got bathrooms that are falling apart and fire alarms that don't work properly and things like that. Seems to me those are higher priority items than buying more supplies and whiteboard stuff. So in the end, I think I'm going to support this supplemental appropriation, but I do encourage the school board to take a good, hard look at how that money will ultimately be spent.
Question for the council is on the adoption of ordinance number 124. Further discussion. Councilor Pepin.
Yeah, I do have a question. I don't know if we need to suspend the rules to have someone from the school board answer it or whatever. Is this adequacy aid looking to be increased next year? Do they know, or is this just a one-shot deal? Because as I look at it right now, if we do increase it, it increases the budget over $31 million next year. That's almost a $2 million increase on next year's taxes that we're not even addressing to look at if that's not increased, that we're looking at. I just like to get staff's impression or someone from the school board or whatever. I don't mind if we know there's going to be an increase in that aid to supplement the thing.
So council rules would have to be suspended in short, as now Representative Vincent could attest to. That is in the hands of the legislature, and that is done per session.
Yes. Your Honor, could I make a motion to suspend council rules to ask the school
Council
district?
moves that city council rules be so far
Staff.
suspended as to allow staff members to answer questions, seconded by Councilor Gibson. The question for the council is on suspension of council rules. All those in favor, please state by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it, and city council rules are so far as suspended. Who would you like to direct your question to?
Staff, so I think either business administrator or superintendent, both, however they want it.
Good evening, everybody. Katie Kraus, Business Administrator. What we're being told, yes, they are going to be continuing because it was legislative changes based on the base rate of adequacy aid. It wasn't, in the past, it was like an extraordinary needs grant that was like a one-time source, but they have increased the base amounts of adequacy. November is when we get our estimate, so we should know in November what they're estimating for our
Thank you. That makes me feel a lot better.
Further questions? Looks like you're both good. Question for the council is on the adoption of ordinance number 124. Further discussion. Councilor Michoud and then Gibson. Councilor Michoud.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor. I have no problem with giving you guys the money. I'm all for what I refer to as the must-do list, the repair of the roofs and all that, and I'm fine with that. That needs to be done. Being as a homeowner, I know you stay on top of the problems, you get them fixed right away, get it done, because you don't, it's going to cost you a heck of a lot more down the road. And then the wish list. That one I have a little problem with. Surprisingly, there's some items on your wish list don't belong there. They belong on the other side, on the must-do list. So, and especially that late bus, that's something that's very important, especially if kids that really need to go to school. I mean, stay after school for extracurricular activities, whatever they got to do, they need a ride home. This is very important that they need to get a ride home. If they don't have a ride home, they're not going to get involved. They don't get involved, that means they go home early, and they probably get into some mischievous things. Trust me, I know that. I see that in my neighborhood. Or should I say, used to. Thanks to the police department, we're right up there doing good in my neighborhood. But a few residents got a hold of me, and I'm just wondering, I hear that the restrooms in the middle school are really sad shape. Are they really that bad? Because she just commented, and she kind of laughed at it. She says, those are probably the same bathrooms that we used when we were there in the middle school 50 years ago. I really hope they're not that bad. So that's one item I think you should be addressing, that if it's possible, fix up the bathrooms for the kids. And another one I just heard today is that some of the drinking fountains that are not utilized in the schools because of there's like lead contamination and all that. I hope that is not true, but that's another item I'd like to see you guys fix. This stuff is for the kids. This stuff, you know, drinking fountains for the kids, between classes, get a drink, that's fine. And also the restrooms in the middle school, if they can be addressed, I'm fine with it. I have no right to tell you what you're to do. But these are a couple items that the members of the community brought up to me. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm fine with this, but really take a look at your wish list, as I call it. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Councilor. The question for the council is on the adoption of ordinance number 124. Further discussion. Councilor Gibson.
I have a hard time with this. Like I said before, I spent 14 years on the school board, and we fought plenty of battles over funding in that time. What I have a problem with is, has been mentioned, is what would be called a wish list of things. I have a hard time rationalizing that versus educational needs or educational support. I could get into a couple other things, but I'm not going to go there tonight. I guess the worst problem I have with this is that everybody seems to be trying to make us out to be the bad guys in this. And we're not. As Councilor Vincent said, we've always supported the school budgets to the best of our ability. None of us want to see the kids go without. The problem I have in the back of my head is, if all these physical structure problems existed, why haven't they been addressed or brought before us prior to this? It seems like a catch-all to make sure that you have a rationale to make sure that we give you all this money back. Not that I'm saying you don't need the money, I'm just saying that it just seems somewhat strange, the rationales that are being used. I would have no problem supporting 1.6 million out of the total, which basically removes what I consider the grab bag from it. Thank you.
Question for the council is on the adoption of ordinance number 124. Further discussion. Councilor Vincent, and then with him. Councilor Vincent.
Thank you, Your Honor. So I'm going to support this. This so-called wish list thing, I think about, okay, so if we cut that out, what does the taxpayers get? And I don't mean to be against also the taxpayers. I'm one of them. But what type of real type of money would they get back? And probably not a lot. And I hate to say that because people be like, you don't know what our budget is. You don't know how it's like to be in a household. You're right, I don't. But I don't think it's going to be that significant that it's going to change everything. But I do want to say this. Okay, so here's the additional $300,000, right, of the wish list, so to speak. Use it wisely, please, because that wish list is a wish list. And get caught up with it now. Not saying it's going to be caught up for 5 years, but get caught up with some of the stuff. So I'm going to definitely be in support of this. Thank you.
Question for the council is on the adoption of ordinance number 124. Further discussion. Councilor Witham.
Thank you. I appreciate the remark about the impact to the taxpayer. I think it would be de minimis at best. I really do. It's a fascinating discussion when you talk about tax rates, and several people that got up here talked about we pay a lot with taxes. Yes, everybody here in New Hampshire, doesn't matter the community, Portsmouth, Durham, Dover, Rochester, I don't know, pick a place, Surrey, that's actually a place. We all pay high property taxes. There are a few places here in the state that pay slightly lower property taxes than us here because they're property-rich communities. We are not one of them. So maybe we feel it a little bit more, but our tax structure here in New Hampshire is just that. It's the property taxes. We don't have an income tax. We don't have a sales tax. You wonder why the state doesn't fund education more adequately. There's no more money coming in the door. That's a long debate for another time, and these people want to go home, so we'll save that for another time. But we lament on that often. My other remark is with regard to the term wish list that's been used here tonight. It's not titled the wish list, it's additional needs. And I can make a case for every one of those additional needs and then some. You know what? It'd be nice if athletic field striping paint was on that list. It's not a wish list thing. We want to have athletic programs. On the list is athletic uniforms. I'm not sure where that doesn't support education. Yeah, maybe it's not a math book or an English book, but it supports the overall educational system. Yeah, I guess a few of those items on there. I mean, there are snow blowers and a tractor to remove snow. Well, guess what? If we have icy walkways and teachers are falling going into the schools, by the way, teachers fall a lot. They do, right? Thousands of slip, trips, and falls a year in the state by teachers, right? Thousands, right? Millions of dollars, right? So that's like a big deal, right? It's not a wish list thing, right? I don't go through all winter at 10 Rouleau Drive without snow blowing my driveway. Heaven's sakes, these are not wish list items. These are just common sense items. Now again, if the school department, staff, ultimately the school board decides to massage these monies in different ways to address other pressing needs, that's up to them, and I have full hope and trust that they will do that. I'm seeing nods of heads. Amen, right? Again, we spent a lot of time and energy on this tonight, and I think it's like one of the simplest votes we could ever take. I'll be done for now.
Question for the council is on the adoption of ordinance number 124. Further discussion. Councillor Pepin.
Just one quick comment is that you talk about the bathrooms and them wanting it. I've gone through the CIP items. The bathrooms are in the CIP items, so you have addressed them. It's just that it's down the road. I know that you people are looking at these problems and you are trying to address them. So that's all I got to say. Thank you.
Question for the council is on the adoption of ordinance number 124. Further discussion. None being so, if you are in favor of the adoption of ordinance number 124, you will state by saying yes. If you're opposed, you will state by saying no. Under city charter, this requires a 2/3 vote. 6 is the number. Chair recognizes the clerk to call the roll.
Councillor Pepin.
Yes.
Vincent.
Yes.
Gibson.
Yes.
Austin.
Yes.
Michaud.
Yes.
Witham.
Yes.
Cameron.
Yes.
Messier.
Yes.
Ordinance number 124 is adopted. No. Council will take a brief recess, meaning 5 minutes. Please be back, and then we will move on to agenda item number 8.
Damn, you're free. I look into your heart and you'll find.
This evening we have a report from the SRPC Executive Director, Jen Sis. Good evening and welcome. Good evening. Jen, is this a PowerPoint and you're requiring? No, okay.
Good evening. My name is Jen Sis. I am director at the Stratford Regional Planning Commission, and here this evening just to have a much less formal presentation, much less stressful presentation, just on Stratford Regional Planning Commission and what we have been up to and some of the things we are working on here with the city. So before the meeting, sent in for you all a packet of some general information. I'm not going to go into it in much detail. I'm just going to do a really quick overview of what's there. You can read it later. It starts off just by outlining that we wear 3 different hats as an organization. We're a regional planning commission, a metropolitan planning organization, which is the transportation planning functions, and an economic development district. So all 3 under one roof. Our commissioners govern all 3 of those entities. So from the city of Somersworth here, we've got Mike Babinski, who's in the back, Chris Horton, as well as Mark Richardson. Oh my gosh, how can I forget? Your commissioners are great and very engaged, and that is a kind of a quintessential part of the role in the relationship between the Planning Commission and the communities, is to have those commissioners as those intermediaries and voices for the community. Just kind of quickly, what else we have in that packet. As part of our 3 hats, we have several core plans that we are required to do, and those are updated very frequently. So as part of that, there is our regional housing needs assessment, which is one of the most recently updated, and that was completed back in March of this year. We also have our comprehensive economic development strategy that we update annually, subsequent to a comprehensive update every 5 years. We also host a whole suite of online data and resources that are available for all of our communities. And should you ever have any questions or need any assistance along those lines, please feel free to reach out to us. Lastly, in your packet, you have an overview of how we utilize dues, why your dues funds are so critical to our organization and operations. While dues this current fiscal year are only about 7% of our budget, 77% of those dues go directly to leveraging our federal funds. And so for every dollar of dues, we return $9 of federal funds. So very critical for us to operate and function along those lines. So kind of just going into the, the more exciting stuff, what we're doing here and what we're working on with the city of Somersworth. Recently, our staff worked with the city and some representatives from the Granite YMCA to submit a CDBG grant application that came before you all. That is answer coming soon. November 2nd, they are holding their meeting to announce who has been awarded. So fingers crossed. We know childcare is a critical need for all of our communities, and so really hoping that does come through. So stay tuned and we'll let you know. On the transportation side of the office, we are always super busy. Folks had asked me to touch base on the Main Street, the Complete Streets project. That was during our last round of project solicitation. It was the top ranked project in the region. When I say ranked, we have our technical advisory committee, which is staff from the 18 communities, staff and volunteers from the 18 communities, as well as our commissioners. They all together collectively get together and rank the projects, and then select those that we send forward for funding under the 10-year plan cycle. Just to give you an idea of like that scope and magnitude, we had 7 projects that was our short list. And then only 2 of those went forward in the region under the most current 10-year round of funding. Those will be, they're in the draft plan right now that will be headed to legislature after the hearings are all complete. And so it would be adopted in July of 24. For the Main Street project, preliminary engineering is slated to start in 2031 and construction in 2033. It is a 10-year plan, and we add to the last 2 years of that planning cycle. With that in mind, we are never done on the project solicitation process. So Colin Lentz, our senior transportation planner, is in the process of meeting with communities to build up that next queue of projects. One of the things that we have been able to do with our transportation program funds, one of those things where we leverage our dues dollars, is we have a consulting engineer that works with the communities to scope out and budget for those projects. Your Main Streets project, you already had a good scope and budget, so they just did a QA/QC before it went over to DOT, but should you have subsequent projects that don't necessarily have that full engineering done and are more conceptual, that would be something that we have those funding dollars to assist with. So stay tuned, and Colin was trying to set something up possibly with staff to move that forward. On the Route 108 Complete Streets project, the initial round of public outreach has concluded. McFarland Johnson and DOT are now working on that next phase of incorporating the public input into those designs, and are working to schedule something with the 3 cities to continue that through the planning process. And just on the last thing I would say on the transportation side, in addition to having engineering services available, we can do smaller studies such as parking studies or bicycle and pedestrian counts. So things like that, if you ever have an interest in, please reach out. It's something that we can come do for the community at no cost. So that's on the transportation side. On the housing side, we have been very busy working with the city. And I know I saw many of you at the September 13th housing workshop that we hosted with the city's planning department. It was a great workshop, a really fun event. It's always my favorite thing to do. So as part of that process, we had we also did a survey. You had over 300 responses to the community survey for the housing chapter of the master plan, which is really fantastic. And some of the things that kind of came out of that survey as some top issues is housing-related concerns are cost, neighborhood safety, and vacant homes. So just some of the things that came up in that process. Staff are now kind of working into that next phase of pulling everything together that we've heard, and they're in the writing phase right now for the master plan chapter itself. And then on the planning side, they're starting to transition into working with the city on what's called a housing audit. And so that is looking at the zoning, subdivision, site plan regulations to identify barriers or opportunities to achieve the community's vision that comes out of that housing chapter, as well as look at demand and how demand can be met within the community. That project is slated to wrap up this coming winter, so it's rapidly moving forward. And let's see on the last note here. Well, we do have all the updates on the project on our website. If you just go to SRPC and you look in the project portal, you'll find it there. Or even if you go, we have community pages. If you go find Somersworth, you'll find it there as well. On the economic development side, we just, at one of our most recent commission meetings, commissioners all met and broke up into small groups after prioritizing some different actions that are in that comprehensive economic development strategy. And what those are is it was an opportunity for commissioners to help set the work plan that we as SRPC staff will be undertaking under the last year and a half or so of our current SEDS that we're working under, SEDS being that comprehensive economic development strategy. A few things that rose to the top, and I know is one of particular interest here in the city, is leveraging our brownfields program. I know we had a small hiatus between funding rounds, and so as of October 1st, our brownfields program is back up and running and fully funded for 4 years. We are in the process of going through the contractor selection to hire that engineering firm that will be available to perform those brownfield assessments. A few other priority economic development initiatives is to continue to support and advocate for zoning reforms for housing. Really continuing to work on that housing, the housing crisis is definitely something that we are already doing with quite a few communities. And then another item that came up was cultivating some strong partnerships with public and private sector partners to promote regional approaches to economic development. And a lot of this is done through what we call the Seacoast Economic Development stakeholders. I know Michelle is a regular on the call. It is once a month now, Tuesday mornings, where it is economic development professionals from around not only our region, but a handful of communities from outside of our region as well join us with the whole focus on collaborating and partnering to better achieve some economic development outcomes for our communities. As part of that process, we recently had some grant funding where we were able to hire a consultant that's put together a small business employee retention and attraction toolkit. That's a nice set of resources. We have coming up, we're trying to do visits to different things on a quarterly basis to view firsthand some of the economic development activities going on in the region. And so the next one is actually scheduled to be here in Somersworth, and we're going to be visiting the manufacturing facility for Gems by Pencil, which is a shoe manufacturing company here in the city. And so we're doing that on November 28th. So I'm just going to wrap up with some of the natural resource projects that we have going on. Staff in my office partnered with the planning department here to write what is called a PREPA grant. PREPA stands for the Piscataqua Region Estuaries Program, our partnership, and they do assessment grants that fund different initiatives that improve water quality protection. And so we were selected and approved to work on an update to the city's land use and natural resource chapter of the master plan. So that will be kicking off probably in the next month, if not next few weeks. So we'll stay tuned. That is up and running. So that's kind of in a nutshell what we have on our current work program that we are working on in collaboration with the city. Any questions?
Questions from council? Councilor Witham.
A comment. I think it would be remiss of us not to say thank you to Stratford Regional Planning for all the work you do in support of not only Stratford County, but in particular this community. I know we have leveraged the work of Stratford Regional Planning pretty aggressively, I think, and we're thankful for those partnership opportunities.
It's our pleasure.
Any further questions from council? Councilor Messier.
Quick comment. I appreciate the work that SRPC has done, and one thing I got out of this, for every dollar we give, we get 9 back. So I would hope during our budget deliberations we don't forget that. And it's just not a singular project, it's many projects that you assist and do. The housing needs, I'm also happy about the audit, so that can help with workforce housing or whatever it is we need in the future. So I don't know if anybody read in the paper, but the housing market is down in the dumps, but the apartment market is stronger than ever. So I appreciate it and thank you.
You're welcome.
Jen, thank you. Thank you for SRPC and everything that you continue to do. And again, thank you for your extreme patience this evening in
Not
the
a
process.
problem.
You seem to hit the lottery ticket of the meetings to come and present of all meetings. So
Good.
thank you.
Thank you so much.
County government is certainly critical within this state. It's really a hidden gem of government. It's very quiet in its operations, and it provides quite a bit, particularly to the municipalities and townships on things that we would not be able to provide ourselves if it wasn't for county government. So thank you again, Jen. Moves us to agenda item number 9, which is presentations of petitions. We have none this evening. Moves us to agenda item number 10, which is the mayor's report. Luckily, you are all spared from the processes of explaining what we need to do this evening, so that negates the majority of my mayor's report. So I will just have a quick one, which is nomination, appointments, and elections. Don't worry, I'll make up for it in the last 2 that I have. Under nomination, appointments, and elections, in accordance with council, especially the last one, in accordance with council rule 17 appointments, the following are being brought forward this evening for a confirmation vote. Chris Horton for reappointment as a member to the Planning Board with a term to expire in October 2026. Keith Perkins for reappointment as a member of the Zoning Board of Adjustment with a term to expire in October 2026. And Tammy F. Sheldon for reappointment as a member of the Trustee of the Trust Fund with a term to expire in October 2026. Also under nomination, appointments, and elections, in accordance with Council Rule 17 appointments, the following is being brought forward this evening and placed in nomination. Richard Brooks for reappointment as a member of the Zoning Board with a term to expire in October 2026. In accordance with Council Rule 17 appointments, the nomination will remain open until the next regular scheduled meeting. This respectfully concludes my October 23rd, 2023 Mayor's Report. Brings us to reports of special committees, reports of standing committees, and we'll start with the Chair of the Finance Committee, Councilor Witham.
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of Council, Finance Committee met on October 16th. For the record, Councilor Michoud was named as a temporary mayoral appointment to the committee so that we would have a quorum. First item on our agenda was the Oaks lease extension. Thank you, Councilor Messier. You mentioned it in your closing comments at last meeting, and lo and behold, here it was. The Finance Committee supports moving forward with the extension lease, which is before us as a resolution for first reading this evening. One point of note with regard to the lease extension, it extends the lease initially to 2038. At that time, it could be extended to 2040, sort of automatically, provided the scope of improvements that Hideout Golf is looking to make to the course are indeed made. If you'll recall, when Mr. Harity and his staff were here presenting about the need for the lease extension, they wanted to make several $1 million worth of improvements at the course, which required them to have the number of golf rounds played increased over the span of the lease extension to pay for those improvements. So there's a bit of a check and balance that's built into the lease extension. Mr. Harity was at the Finance Committee, and he and his team are fine with that language being in the lease agreement. Next item on our agenda was sort of an emergency item, which is the catch basin repair, corner of Blackwater Road and High Street. This was flagged some time ago by Councillor Vincent in his travels across the way. Staff has done quite a bit of investigation into the catch basin that's in need of repair there. And unfortunately, the entire catch basin structure is failing. It's not just the rim as we had initially thought. The replacement of the entire catch basin is going to push us somewhere near maybe $50,000. We received a couple of quotes, the least expensive of which was SUR Construction out of Rochester for $40,000. Finance Committee authorized up to $50,000, putting in a contingency. That's within our spending authority, so that work undoubtedly is being scheduled with Public Works. We'd like to get it in this construction season. It's going to require detours. It's a complicated project because it's right in the middle of the intersection. So we hopefully can be moving forward with that. Next item on our agenda was funding for the engineering for the next phase. We'll call it phase 2 of the upgrades to our wastewater treatment facility on Buffinsville Road. We have $450,000 budgeted for that. The cost for that phase 2 engineering work is $415,000, again paid for through the Wastewater Enterprise Fund. Finance Committee supports moving forward with that request to award the bid to Wright Pierce. It's actually not a bid. It's single source. Wright Pierce has done all of our work at the wastewater treatment plant. They're familiar with it. It's considered a professional service, so we don't need to bid it. So we suggest moving forward with that. It's in our packet for a first reading tonight to award that to Wright Pierce. Similarly, we're looking to do the same with the Hamilton Street standpipe, the water tower, if you will, up by the Noble Pines, to award that to Wright Pierce as well. It's a different division of Wright Pierce to do that work, and that first reading is in our packet tonight in an amount not to exceed $300,500. Under reporting, Finance Director Smith said there were no notable concerns to date in the fiscal year budget. We're still relatively early in that process. We had a discussion about the school funding that we just already approved, so I can gloss over that. Councilor Austin did ask about under miscellaneous, the setting of the tax rate. In part was the determination on the supplemental appropriation was needed here tonight, which that's been made, so we can now be in communication with DRA to look to set the tax rate later this fall, probably on a similar timetable to what we saw last year. So that concludes the report of the Finance Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Brings us to Government Operations. Councilor Michoud.
And thank you, Your Honor. We have not met, but we're planning on a meeting next Tuesday, October 31st, here in Council Chambers at 5 p.m.
Thank you, Councilor. Brings us to Economic Development. Councilor Austin.
No report this evening, Your Honor.
Thank you, Councilor. Brings us to Public Safety. Councilor Pepin.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. We did have a meeting on October 16th at 3:15. Councilor Michoud filled in because we didn't quite have a quorum, but appointed by you, the Mayor. The first thing was approval of the minutes of August 30th, passed 2-0 and 1 abstain. The first thing that was brought up is Councilman Witham asked us, the Safety Committee, to look into e-bike laws. Chief Macklin gave us an update. Basically, it falls under RSA Law 259, under the state law, New Hampshire state law. It's listed as vehicle equipment with an electronic motor less than 750 watts. There is 3 different classifications on them. They have the same rules as a regular pedal bike. So basically, if anything happens to them, it would be almost, if a pedal bike hit a car, it would be the same thing as if an e-bike hit a car. So it ended up possibly being more or less a civil matter than it would be any type of anything. We did look to see if there was any type of insurance out there. There doesn't seem to be an insurance company covering them at all, and it's not a state requirement that the state require insurance on them. Class 1 and Class 2. Class 1 basically is a pedal assist bicycle. That means that you need the pedal to actually, and it just assists you doing it. Class 2 is one that can be actually motorized without the pedaling of it. There is no age requirement on these two. Helmets are required from 16 and under. There is no license required. They're allowed on trails and roads. So there's no, and they both can reach up to the speeds of 20 miles an hour. Class 3 is a little bit different. Basically, the speeds can be 28 miles an hour. There's no license required. You have to be a mandatory of 16 years of age or older. And helmets are required for anybody that's under 18 years old. So that's it on the e-bikes. The police chief did give us an update on the police department. We reported on the body cameras. They're working very, very well. They're also strengthening their court cases also, so it's a plus for them also. The 2 SRV vehicles, police vehicles that are going on patrol, they've been striped. They're just waiting for radios like everybody else. And hopefully they'll be out in service very quickly. Staffing right now, they have one that's possibly going to come out of graduation out of the police academy in November. We have one career New Hampshire certified police department that's on field training right now. And we still have 6 openings. So anyone that is qualified, looking for a good job, we have 6 openings at the police department. He also did report that New Hampshire Police Academy, their educational program next year is increasing from 16 weeks to 18 weeks. So that will be, next year there'll be an increase in the education of a police officer. He gave us a report on the radios dispatch systems. Basically, they're still waiting for equipment. This has been, and they have no timeline of when the equipment's going to be coming in. And the 2 new sergeants will be attending Supervisory Leadership Institute through the New Hampshire FBI, through the FBI LEAD program. And that was it for the police department. Chief Kremlinger basically gave us an update on the open house and also gave us an update on the fire station. There's very little things left to do. There's a few minor things that's still working on, blue lights, waiting for furniture. I guess the kitchen table isn't in the up top. So gave us a report on that. Engine 5 is almost fully equipped and stuff like that. It's working well. They're just trying to reconfigure the compartments because equipment placement has been trying to figure out what works best for the manpower that we have and where it's located on the trucks for them, because every compartment's a little different on each truck. He did report that the 5 pumps went through annual testing. The ladder the ladder truck went through an annual testing, and also all the ground ladders went through an annual testing, I should say. EMS update from Manager Paul Robidas. Basically, the calls are averaging constantly about the same. They're just pretty normal. The average response time is about 4 minutes. They have 2 new ambulances all striped and ready to go, also waiting for radios. They can't go out on the field. New Hampshire won't certify them to be out on the fields unless they have the radios. Same thing as the police department right now. If the volume of calls keep on going the way they're going, they figure there'll be well over 2,000 calls this year in responding. Under miscellaneous, the city manager let us know that Somersworth, Dover, and Rochester are looking for someone to take over the emergency warming shelter. That SOS doesn't seem to be interested in operating this year the way things are. So he brought that up. Paul Robidas did make a comment. He's kind of sorry to see them go because last year they did an excellent job, and we'd love to see them back because they they took care of a lot of things, and their calls reduced a lot with them managing the system. And we adjourned at 3:39.
Thank you, Councilor. Brings us to Public Works and the Environment. Councilor Witham.
Thank you. Public Works and Environment met on October 16th as well. Similarly, temporary appointment of Councilor Michoud by the mayor to the committee so we would have a quorum. We discussed the catch basin repair, which I already reported on under finance, so I'll skip over that. We discussed the wastewater treatment plant design upgrade. I already reported on that, so I'll skip over that. Same with the Hamilton Street standpipe. Significant discussion about our 2024 road resurfacing plan. And I'll try to break it down as easily as I can because it relates to 3 resolutions before us in our packets this evening for first reading. I think the simplest of which is our traditional road resurfacing. We look to have West High Street from High Street to Cemetery Road milled and overlaid. Parkview Terrace would be a shim and overlay. That's the small road that goes in between the fire station and the Labonte apartments there. That kind of got beat up during the construction process of the fire station, so it needs some work. And then 3 streets that are connected off of High Street, that being Pleasant Street, Silver Street, and Fremont Street. Some level of mill and overlay to all of those because they're all connected. That brings me to that section of High Street from West High to about South Street. The committee desires to have that section of High Street milled and overlaid as well, but not before we address the sidewalk on the westerly side of the road, basically the opposite side of the road that we just did this past year. That requires us to do some engineering first. A lot of preliminary engineering has already been done by CMA engineers. They did the engineering work for the TAP grant, which was this original section of sidewalk that we did. So again, it's a professional service. We recommend awarding the bid for that engineering service to CMA. They would work on that over the winter and into the spring, but we would solicit bids for that High Street mill and overlay and the sidewalk as sort of a separate standalone project. In sum total, these streets and sidewalks we estimate to be about $1.3, $1.4 million worth of work, which we do have the money available in the various road resurfacing, road maintenance accounts to get that work done. So we're optimistic that we can do it all in the next construction season. Again, it's going to be a little bit tight, but there are 3 different, there's the High Street section and sidewalk project, there's the CMA engineering work, and then there's the traditional road resurfacing work that are all teed up. So hopefully I didn't confuse anybody with that. We discussed the new section of sidewalk that's been constructed on Tri-City Road, about from the entrance to what used to be Tri-City Gardens, which I think is now called Terra Meadows, and it goes all the way down to the entrance to Terra Estates. That was put in by the Flatley Company as a condition of approval of the planning board process when they constructed the self-storage units that are actually in Rollinsford, but the traffic from that exits out on the Tri-City Road, hence the nexus as to how the sidewalk was required there. City engineer looked at it. The sidewalk itself is built satisfactory to city standards, and city council will ultimately need to accept that sidewalk, so we know that's good. However, there's about 80 feet of curbing that they were supposed to install that they didn't. The developer, Flatley, has been notified of that. They hope to get that done during this construction season. We would then take action on accepting the sidewalk so that it could be plowed this coming winter. So ball's in their court right now. I don't know if it was an engineering oversight on their part, construction oversight, but nonetheless an oversight on behalf of the developer. Speaking of sidewalks, we also had a discussion of our sidewalk reconstruction plan. Aside from that section of sidewalk on High Street, which will be pricey, The only section of sidewalk that we seem to be able to afford to do based upon budgeted numbers for next year is the section of sidewalk on Maple Street from Maplewood School to Cemetery Road. So it's a rather short segment there, but if you, it helps with that school walking route, that connectivity. We're going to try to continue to build off of that and tackle that. We had a brief discussion about a driveway easement on Pinewood Drive. Oddly enough, the driveway needs to go through an Eversource utility easement before it can access us. So it's kind of a quirky layout of the house lot. This is just a bit of an administrative work that we're looking to clean up there. We had a number of miscellaneous items that we sort of flagged for staff on some repairs that were needed around the city. A brief discussion about our pavement and crosswalk markings. We'd like the city manager to look to include in the FY25 budget, as he begins to prepare that in the coming months, to get us a cost to not only stripe our crosswalks and stop bars throughout the city, which we do annually, but it's become recognized that our parking stalls in the downtown corridor have become quite faded, and to roll that into that bit of work, that scope of work. So we just kind of flagged that for him. A lot going on, but that'll conclude my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Brings us to question, Counselor Gibson. You may proceed. Just kidding. No, you can't say. No, go ahead, Counselor.
I don't know if, now you made me forget what I was going to
I have that effect on people.
Never mind. I lost it.
Brings us to the Recreation Chair, Counselor Cameron.
Thank you, Your Honor. We have a meeting on Wednesday, the 25th. We'll have a brief meeting at 4 o'clock, and then we'll proceed to the Ash Street Park for the butterfly garden ribbon cutting. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Brings us to agenda item number 12, which is reports of special committees. Any reports of special committees? Counselor Gerding.
Thank you, Your Honor. We had our first meeting of the Community Power Coalition of New Hampshire on Thursday, October 19th at 4 p.m. It was here in Council Chambers. Number of agenda items to get this program off the ground. The first was to introduce the new members. So with us for that day were 4 members. It was myself, Councillor Witham, Tim Baskin, and Laura Berry were present. After that, we moved on to agenda item number 2, which was to discuss the resolution this council body passed in favor of forming this special committee regarding the Community Power Coalition. I read through the resolution just so that we could kind of set the ground rules for what we were expected to do as a committee. After that, moved on to agenda item number 3, which was to discuss the process with the Community Power Coalition of New Hampshire representatives. So we had with us Henry Herndon from Community Power Coalition of New Hampshire. And he kind of walked us through a bunch about the program, kind of in 2 buckets of information. So the first bucket being like the process of how this program would get off the ground if we were to move forward with it, and then information about how the program works. So I have a bunch of notes, and I'll do my very best to try to like filter all of this info into those 2 buckets. So process-wise, it was the responsibility of the committee to develop a plan that would then go to the full council to hopefully adopt and then get approval from the state so that we could join. Again, the plan in which we would need to pass, he provided us some kind of template plans. These plans are pretty boilerplate, if you will, with a lot that doesn't need to be done by the committee, thankfully. However, one piece that we would need to work on are the goals for this, for the city in regards to our energy use and energy consumption. And so as a committee, we decided we'd discuss that at our next meeting. I'll get to that in a little bit when we get to that agenda item. But again, thinking about process, Mr. Herndon explained that the next round of joining on for communities would be in June of next year. And so he kind of walked us backwards from that point to give us a better sense of the timeline if we wanted to aim for that date to join. And so he was saying that they do a large educational piece to the community. They send out mailers. They reach out to the media to provide information, op-eds, local resources, all those things so that the community is aware of that. And he likes to have a lot of that done in advance of us joining in June, so hopefully by April or May. Also along that time, so that as community members are getting information about this, there will be a opt-out letter that is sent to electrical customers, and this letter would allow folks, if they didn't want to join the Community Power Coalition, to return the letter to this organization and opt out of joining. I want to be clear that anyone with Eversource would need to do this opt-out if you are not interested in it. Otherwise, you would automatically be enrolled if we were to move forward with this. There are a couple exceptions to this, being those with solar panels on their house, because there's not yet the infrastructure to be able to handle having them be a part of this. Though they are looking forward in the future to be being able to allow this, hopefully within the next year. And the the next one besides those solar panel owners are third-party electrical consumers. So if you don't have Eversource but you have a third party, you would also need to opt in, not opt out. Hope that's clear. So kind of working our way backwards, he said if we wanted to do that by April, May, that means we would need to have state approval by about February timeline, which means that this council would need to approve it by January. That kind of gave us as a committee a good sense of when we would need to bring our plan forward to council with the hopes of getting it passed so that we could join in for June. Looks like we'll be hopefully meeting within the next month, and I think the undertaking is actually not as much as I thought it was at first, and I think it is a reasonable timeline for us, so hopefully we'll get that to you. So that was kind of the process bucket, if you will. Background bucket, he gave us a lot of info about how this program works, some of which I've mentioned already, but essentially once we are enrolled, everyone who has chosen to not opt out of this will be in. It will, in essence, hopefully lower electricity prices for consumers. Currently, they are at about a 12% savings compared to Eversource, and even higher savings compared to some third-party electrical companies. So again, that's great for the community, saves folks a lot of money. We learned, a ton about how they source their energy. I'm not going to go into those dirty details, but it was certainly very fascinating. If you are interested, feel free to read the minute notes. One fascinating piece that is worth mentioning is there's a reserve fund. So as an organization, the Community Power Coalition has about 10% of the costs go into this reserve fund. And the reserve fund is used for a variety of things, not only just like purchasing quality energy, but also hopefully down the line allowing communities to be able to either finance through them or have the backing of the organization to do projects for like solar or other energy related things, essentially. I feel like I'm missing another use of the reserve fund, but I might find it in my notes, so bear with me, I apologize. The other use is essentially to keep rates low. That was the other use. So that if for any chance that they are not hitting their target of having lower than Eversource prices, they can tap into the reserve fund to bring prices down. So it was a great use for that. What other background did we learn? There's a ton. I'm so sorry. I'm just going through my handwritten notes. Essentially, I think that's a big piece of it. Electrical assistance is folks who receive that can still qualify, so they're not, there's no fear for them for being able to use this. We will have a representative from the community on the board, so Scott is currently, our finance director, is currently going to be our representative. Bob is our alternate, city manager is our alternate. So they'll be ones who will advocate for the city at the state level and to this organization about the rates and things like that. And then I think that's mostly it in terms of background. I have a ton of info. If you have questions, I'm happy to talk with you about it after. After we heard from the representative from Community Power Coalition, we jumped into our own discussion about it, and we kind of all agreed, like, it seems like a great program. We're interested in pursuing it further, and we wanted to look into developing the plan, which we will bring forward to you all. Our kind of homework, if you will, for our next meeting was to look into whether the city has any energy-specific goals already set, whether in our master plan or elsewhere. And so we're also going to kind of just look into developing what goals we as committee members felt would be appropriate for the city to put forward for energy specific to this program. After that, I think we just discussed our next meeting schedule, and I can't remember off the top of my head when we scheduled it for. I believe it's in November. Let's see if I can find it. If anyone remembers, let me know. 16th sounds right. I'll let you know when I remember. I think we'll have a meeting before then. I apologize for not having it off the top of my head. And that was it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Further reports of special committees. Any further reports of special committees? None being so, City Manager.
Thank you, Your Honor. I just have a few comments that were provided in my written report to council. I'll go over this pretty quickly since it's been covered by the committee chairs, and much of the information is contained within the resolutions and ordinances themselves. Ordinance 324 in regards to the supplemental appropriation for the Hamilton Street water tank design services. I'd recommend a public hearing be scheduled for the next council meeting for this on Monday, November 13th, as well as the following ordinance 424 in regards to the zoning change, Chapter 19, regarding the Historic District Commission's boundary changes. So 2 public hearings at the next regular meeting, Your Honor.
Without objection, we will schedule both of those public hearings. Without objection.
Thank you. The next one is in regards to Resolution 1524, the 20-year lease extension agreement with Hideout Golf, Inc., the operation and maintenance of an 18-hole golf course on city-owned property. I just point out that I did provide you a draft copy of that document that you'll be eventually voting on November 13th, as well as other supporting documents that were related to when the operators of the golf course met with the various committees to outline the capital improvement programs they look to move forward on prior to the expiration of their current lease, which expires 2040. If they don't complete those by 2038, then the extension would stall. If they complete them by 2038, then it's a 20-year extension to 2060. Resolution 1624 regards to, and that was approved, back to the lease extension, that was approved by city attorney, and of course the operators are fine with that also. The next one is in regards to 1624, Wright Pierce Engineering, for the next phase of the Somersworth wastewater treatment plant. Again, both the Public Works and Finance Committee have vetted this project and the need to move forward. As mentioned by the chair, we do have money in the budget for this project. Next resolution, 1724, is in regards to the Hamilton Street water tank and the engineering services agreement that council will need to vote on. And I provided you documents that were provided to our council standing committees in regards to how Wright Pierce engineers will approach the project, both for the wastewater treatment plant and for the water tank project moving forward. Next resolution, 1824, bid specifications for road resurfacing and associated repairs on selected streets. And again, just background information that was provided to the standing committees. I think the chair went over those 2 projects, this one, as well as the High Street reconstruction and the sidewalk itself, regards to resolution 2024. Stuck in between the 1824 and 2024, obviously, is 1924. And we need to move forward with that engineering services agreement with CMA. And again, I provided you their approach as well as their cost. And I would respectfully suggest that the council consider waiving its rules to provide a second reading and vote this evening so that we can expedite completion of design and get this out to bid so that we might be able to get it done during, as the chair mentioned, the next construction season in 2024. We can't move forward with bidding out the actual construction work until we get that design done on the sidewalk. I'd like to add under other, after consulting with the mayor, item under other, the council did authorize the National Guard site property going out through a realtor and seeking purchase and sales responses. We have 2 of them. So number one, in discussing this with her today, she felt it was important that we set a deadline for when the P&S requests stop, a date certain. It's been out a full week now, and unless council feels otherwise, I suggest she push out their date of any offers need to be in by the end of this week, the close of business on Friday, October 27th, so that we can look at what we got and bring it to council. The second part of this is to hold a special council meeting, and the date for discussion or ratification is Tuesday, October 31st, after the Government Operations Committee at 5, to meet in non-public at 5:30, to look at 2 or more offers that we have. It would be the intent to bring those folks that have submitted the offer one at a time, to meet with council, to explain how they wish to move forward with the use of the property. If the council is inclined to move forward, we'd have to discuss bringing a resolution out to the public and actually allow the public to comment on the use, and it would need council vote in regards to moving it forward to an actual sale. Did everybody understand the framework of the 2 items?
Unless there is objection on either one, I mean, I have scheduled that special meeting, and unless there is objection on either one, then we will proceed forward. Councilor Vincent.
I object because I have planned a vacation around our council meetings, and now there's a special meeting coming up when I'm gone. I know it's a problem. I know I'm only one person, so I'll accept what you come up with, but I'm just letting you know that I object right now.
When are you back?
I am back on Sunday, the 5th.
Of November.
And I understand it's a problem, Your Honor. I apologize. But you know, in this crazy life we live, in this government that we serve, there sometimes has to come vacations. I knew you'd love that.
Council will have a brief recess. Manager, you are still recognized. Thank you, Council, for all of your accommodations.
Thank you, Your Honor. What was discussed off camera, there was a consensus to move the date to accept offers for a purchase and sale to Friday, November 3rd, close of business, and the council would hold a special meeting on Thursday, November 9th at 5:30 p.m. It'd be a non-public session to receive some presentations from the realtor and the people who have made the offers. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. That conclude your report?
Yes, concludes my report. Thank you.
We were missing that famous line. I didn't want to end the show without that line. Thank you, Mr. Manager. Brings us to agenda item number 13, which is nomination, appointments, and elections. On the nomination, appointments, and elections, in accordance with Council Rule 17 appointments, the following are being brought forward this evening for a confirmation vote. As already mentioned, Chris Horton, Keith Perkins, and Tammy F. Sheldon all are up for reappointment. Without objection from council, I would obtain a motion to move the slate. Councilor Witham.
Move that we adopt the slate as presented.
I second
Witham
that.
moves that the slate of nominees be adopted as presented, seconded by Councilor Vincent. The question for the council is on confirmation of all of the nominees. All those in favor, please state by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it, and the nominees are so far as appointed. Also under nomination, appointments, and elections, in accordance with Council Rule 17 appointments, the following is being brought forward and placed in nomination this evening. Richard Brooks for reappointment as a member of the Zoning Board with a term to expire in October 2026.
Your Honor, I'd like to suspend council rules to act on the nominee tonight.
I'll second that.
Councilor Witham moves that City Council rules be so far as suspended as to allow the nominee to be voted on this evening, seconded by Councilor Vincent.
If I may.
The question for the council is on suspension of council rules. All those in favor, please state by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it, and City Council rules are so far as suspended. For the council this evening, for Action on the nomination is Richard Brooks for reappointment as a member of the zoning board for the term to expire in October 2026. What are the wishes of the council? Council Witham.
Move that we approve the nominee.
Council Witham moves that the nominee be so far as approved, seconded by Councilor Vincent. Discussion. None being so, just a side note, obviously I've brought Mr. Brooks forward for appointment. I would not bring someone forward for appointment if I did not want them reappointed. Mr. Brooks, as you are well aware, you're up for election. If you are elected to this council, that will then force a resignation from the zoning board. So you just to be aware of that could be a resignation coming forward that shouldn't affect the actions, however, of this body, whether you believe he's qualified or not. Question for the council is on confirmation of the nominee. All those in favor, please state by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it, and the nominee is so far as confirmed. Brings us to agenda item number 14, which is items which have been laid upon the table. There are no items which have been laid upon the table. Brings us to agenda item number 15, which is unfinished business. Chair recognizes the clerk for a second reading on ordinance number 224.
Ordinance number 224, to amend Chapter 19 zoning by adding Section 4.C conditional use permit, Section 33 solar, and Table 4.A.6 use of solar.
Ordinance number 224 have been read a first and second time is open to further amendment. No amendment being offered, the chair will obtain a motion on ordinance number 224. Council Witham.
Move for its adoption.
Council Witham moves that ordinance number 224 be so far as adopted, seconded by Councilor Vincent. Discussion. Council Witham.
Although I did sponsor the resolution, I will tell you this got vetted through, I think 3 or more planning board meetings and sort of massaged at length to come up with an ordinance that addresses solar use here in the city of Somersworth. If you watch any zoning board meeting, there are many, they wrangle with this because there's a lack of clarity in our zoning ordinance around this. This looks to provide some clarity around that whole issue. Thank you.
Question for the council is on the adoption of ordinance number 224. Further discussion. Councilor Messier.
Yeah, I understand there was a lot of work done. I do have some concerns in this document that I read. Like, I'll give you one. Why is the city exempt from any of these new rules? If we want to impose it upon the citizenry, then why are we exempting ourselves? It's not going to preclude or the solar array on the landfill because that was already approved. That's one. I don't really know why this was, or I'll give you another one that is. Why can't I put solar panels on a roof of a carport? It'd be no different if it was a flat roof, pitch roof on a garage. But I'll support this, but I don't get some of those. And then some of the setbacks are increased almost to the point where nobody will be able to do it other than on your house. And then I got a kick out of you got to have an engineering report for the panels on the roof, but yet somebody on West High Street that I seen, Creighton's guys, were carrying solar panels by themselves up on the roof. But we're going to impose a fee on a landowner for something that is totally unwarranted. If you can carry up the panel, I mean, obvious, it's like a flat screen TV now. They weigh, what, 8 pounds? I mean, it's just government intrusion upon, I still don't get why we're doing this, but, and I'm not watching any planning board meeting or zoning board, there's no way. So, okay, that's my 2 cents, so.
Question for the council is on the adoption of ordinance number 224. Further discussion. None being so, if you are in favor of the adoption of ordinance number 224, you will state by saying yes. If you are opposed, you will state by saying no. Chair recognizes the clerk to call the roll.
Councilor Pepin.
Yes.
Vincent.
Yes.
Gibson.
No.
Austin.
Yes.
Michaud.
Yes.
Witham.
Yes.
Girding.
Yes.
Cameron. Yes. Messier.
Ordinance number 224 is adopted. Brings us to agenda item number 16, which is new business. New business under ordinances. Chair recognizes the clerk for a first reading on ordinance number 324.
Ordinance number 324, supplemental appropriation for engineering and design services to replace the Hamilton Street water tank, October 23rd, 2023. The City of Somersworth ordains that pursuant to Section 7.7A of the City Charter, the annual budget for the City of Somersworth for fiscal year 23-24 is amended as follows. Appropriate $146,000 from water fund revenue to the Water Department budget as follows. Original budget, $3,236,505. Amendment, $146,000. Revised budget, $3,382,505. Approved as to funding, Scott A. Smith, Director of Finance and Administration, recorded by Kristen LePan, City Clerk. Background.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Background. This ordinance appropriates additional funding to provide engineering and design services to replace the Hamilton Street water tank. The fiscal year 2022-2023 adopted budget included an appropriation in the amount of $154,500 to replace the roof on the current Hamilton Street water tank. The project cost came in significantly higher than the amount budgeted, so those funds will be used in conjunction with the supplemental appropriation to begin the process of replacing that tank. This ordinance requires a public hearing and requires a 2/3 majority vote of the City Council after the public hearing, subject to Section 7.4.1 and Section 7.7A of the City Charter. This ordinance shall take effect upon its passage. Sponsored by Councilors David A. Witham, Donald Austin, Richard Michaud, approved City Attorney.
Ordinance number 324 will remain in first reading until the next regular scheduled meeting. Chair recognizes the clerk for a first reading on ordinance number 424.
Your Honor.
Thank you very much. Councilor Witham.
I'd like to move that council suspend rules to read by title only.
Councilor Witham moves that City Council rules be so far as suspended as to allow a reading on ordinance number 424 by title only. Seconded by Councilor Girding. Question for the council is on suspension.
Discussion, if you may.
Discussion.
Obviously, I want to be as transparent as I can with this. However, to read through this ordinance, I'll give you an example. It says property map 10 from the corner of here to there, lot 120. No one would be able to follow along with this, so you really need to see the map to understand it. Thank you.
Question for the council is on the waiving of council rules to allow ordinance number 424 to be read by title only. Is the parliamentary procedure clear? All those in favor, please state by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please. All those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it, and City Council rules are so far as suspended. Chair recognizes the clerk for a first reading on ordinance number 424 by title only.
Ordinance number 424, to amend Chapter 19 zoning, Section 19.3D district boundaries, and Section 19.14C.3 district boundaries.
Ordinance number 424 is assigned to the Committee on Economic Development. Chair recognizes the clerk for a first reading on Resolution 1524.
Resolution number 1524, to authorize the city manager to execute a 20-year lease extension agreement with Hideout Golf LLC for the operation and maintenance of an 18-hole golf course on city-owned property. October 23, 2023. Whereas the City Council adopted Resolution 324 on August 7, 2023 to authorize the city manager to negotiate a 20-year lease extension agreement with Hideout Golf LLC to operate and maintain an 18-hole golf course with associated golf course facilities and improvements known as the Oaks Golf Course. And whereas the city manager and Hideout Golf LLC have negotiated a proposed lease extension agreement under the following terms and conditions. The city is the owner of the Oaks Golf Course property, which is leased to Hideout Golf LLC with a lease agreement expiration date of December 1st, 2040. And Hideout Golf LLC will make significant capital improvements to include new irrigation construction, bunker and cart path construction, and redesign of several holes. And the parties agree that if the proposed improvements are fully completed by December 1st, 2038, the lease agreement expiration date will be extended through December 1st, 2060. And whereas the proposed lease extension agreement was presented to the Finance Committee and they support extending the lease extension agreement under the aforementioned conditions. Now therefore be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Somersworth that the city manager is authorized to execute a 20-year lease extension agreement with Hideout Golf LLC for the operation and maintenance of an 18-hole golf course and associated improvements on city-owned property. Sponsored by Councilors David A. Witham, Donald Austin, Richard Michaud, and approved City Attorney.
Resolution 1524 will remain in first reading until the next regular scheduled meeting. Chair recognizes the clerk for a first reading on Resolution 1624.
Resolution number 1624, to authorize the city manager to contract with Wright Pierce Engineering of Portsmouth, New Hampshire for engineering service at the Somersworth Wastewater Treatment Facility, October 23, 2023. Whereas the City of Somersworth fiscal year 2023-2024 adopted wastewater enterprise budget contains an appropriation for engineering services for the preliminary design of Phase 2 upgrades to the Somersworth Wastewater Treatment Facility. And whereas Wright Pierce Engineering was contracted to engineer, design, and administer the recently completed Phase 1 upgrades of the facility. And whereas Wright Pierce Engineers has provided the city a proposal for engineering services to provide preliminary design of the Phase 2 improvements for an amount not to exceed $415,000. And whereas the Public Works and Environment Committee has reviewed the proposal with city staff and supports contracting with Wright Pierce Engineering. And whereas the Finance Committee has reviewed the proposal with city staff and supports contracting with Wright Pierce Engineering. Now therefore be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Somersworth that the city manager is authorized to contract with Wright Pierce Engineering of Portsmouth, New Hampshire for the preliminary design of Phase 2 upgrades of the Somersworth Wastewater Treatment Facility for an amount not to exceed $415,000 and to take any other action related to this contract determined to be in the best interest of the city. Sponsored by Councilors David A. Witham, Martin Pepin, Donald Austin, Richard Michaud, approved City Attorney.
Resolution 1624 will remain in first reading until the next regular scheduled meeting. Chair recognizes the clerk for his first reading on Resolution 1724.
Resolution number 1724, to authorize the city manager to contract with Wright Pierce Engineering of Portsmouth, New Hampshire for engineering services to replace the Hamilton Street water tank, October 23, 2023. Whereas the City of Somersworth's fiscal year 2022-2023 adopted water enterprise budget contains an appropriation to repair the roof of the Hamilton Street water tank to extend the life of this asset. And whereas city staff solicited proposals for this work, however, the cost of repair was significantly over the amount appropriated and does not justify any additional life that may be realized by the repair. And whereas this repair was reviewed by the Public Works and Environment Committee with city staff, and the committee decided to initiate plans to replace the water tank and recommend using the funding available for the roof repair towards engineering services required to design a replacement water tank. And whereas city staff requested and received a proposal from Wright Pierce Engineering to update the evaluation of the water tank, prepare preliminary and final design of water tank replacement, and provide project bidding services, with said proposal being in the amount of $300,500. And whereas the Public Works and Environment Committee has reviewed the proposal with city staff and supports contracting with Wright Pierce Engineering, whereas the Finance Committee has reviewed the proposal with city staff and supports contracting with Wright Pierce Engineering. Now therefore be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Somersworth that the city manager is authorized to contract with Wright Pierce Engineering of Portsmouth, New Hampshire for the engineering and design to replace the Hamilton Street water tank for an amount not to exceed $300,500 and to take any other action related to this contract determined to be in the best interest of the city. Sponsored by Councilors David A. Witham, Martin Pepin, Donald Austin, Richard Michaud, approved City Attorney.
Resolution 1724 will remain in first reading until the next regular scheduled meeting. Chair recognizes the clerk for a first reading on Resolution 1824.
Resolution number 1824, to authorize the city manager to prepare bid specifications for road resurfacing and associated repairs of selected streets and to repair and reconstruct the sidewalk on the east side of Maple Street, October 23, 2023. Whereas the City of Somersworth's Capital Improvement Plan recommends road resurfacing and other general maintenance of streets and sidewalk improvements throughout the city. And whereas the city has prioritized street repair using the Pavement Condition Index Assessment tool. And whereas the city has prioritized sidewalk repair using the Sidewalk Condition Index Assessment tool. And whereas the Public Works and Environment Committee reviewed the list of streets provided by staff based on the pavement condition analysis and supports the following recommendation. West High Street to Cemetery Road, Mill Overlay. Parkview Terrace, Maple Street to Tennis Courts, Shim Overlay. Pleasant Street, High Street to Green Street, Mill Overlay. Silver Street, Franklin Street to Pleasant Street, Mill Overlay. Fremont Street, Silver Street to Garden Street, Mill Overlay. And whereas the Public Works and Environment Committee reviewed the list of sidewalks provided by staff based on the sidewalk condition analysis and supports the following recommendation. Maple Street sidewalk, east side, Maplewood School to Cemetery Road. Now therefore be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Somersworth that the city manager is authorized to prepare bid specifications and solicit bids from qualified contractors for road resurfacing and associated repairs of the aforementioned streets to repair and reconstruct the sidewalk on the east side of Maple Street, Maplewood School to Cemetery Road, and take any other action relative to this project determined to be in the best interest of the city. Sponsored by Councilors David A. Witham, Martin Pepin, Richard Michaud, approved city attorney.
Councilor Witham.
I'd like to move to suspend council rules to act on the resolution this evening.
Councilor Witham moves that City Council rules be so far as suspended as to allow a second reading on Resolution 1824 this evening, seconded by Councilor Girding. Discussion. None being so, all those in favor of suspension of council rules, please state by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it, and City Council rules are so far as suspended. Chair recognizes the clerk for a second reading on Resolution 1824.
Resolution number 1824, to authorize the city manager to prepare bid specifications for road resurfacing and associated repairs of selected streets and to repair and reconstruct the sidewalk on the east side of Maple Street.
Resolution 1824 has been read a first and second time is open to further amendment. No amendment be it offered, the chair will obtain a motion on Resolution 1824. Councilor Vincent.
Thank you, Your Honor. I make a motion that we move on Resolution 1824 as
Councilor
read.
Vincent moves that Resolution 1824 be so far as approved, seconded by Councilor Gibson. Discussion. None being so, if you're in favor of the adoption of Resolution 1824, you will state by saying yes. If you are opposed, you will state by saying no. Chair recognizes the clerk to call the roll.
Councilor Pepin.
Yes.
Vincent.
Yes.
Gibson.
Yes.
Austin.
Yes.
Michaud.
Yes.
Witham.
Yes.
Girding.
Yes.
Cameron. Messier.
Resolution 1824 is adopted. Chair recognizes the clerk for a first reading on Resolution 1924.
Resolution number 1924, to authorize the city manager to contract with CMA Engineers of Portsmouth, New Hampshire for engineering services for the design to reconstruct the west side sidewalk on High Street. October 23, 2023. Whereas the City Council adopted Resolution 3018 on April 16, 2018, to authorize the city manager to contract with CMA Engineers to provide engineering services associated with the Transportation Alternatives Grant Program, which included design services for the reconstruction of the east side sidewalk on High Street from Franklin Street to West High Street. And whereas city staff requested a proposal from CMA Engineers to provide engineering services for the design to reconstruct the west side sidewalk on High Street from West High Street to South Street. And whereas CMA Engineers responded to the request with a proposal to provide these engineering services for a cost not to exceed $68,000. And whereas the Public Works and Environment Committee reviewed this proposal with city staff and supports contracting with CMA Engineers. Now therefore be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Somersworth that the city manager is authorized to contract with CMA Engineers of Portsmouth, New Hampshire for engineering services for the design to reconstruct the west side of High Street from West High Street to South Street for an amount not to exceed $68,000 and to take any other action related to this contract determined to be in the best interest of the city. Sponsored by Councilors David Witham, Martin Pepin, Richard Michaud, approved city attorney.
Councilor Witham.
Yes, I'd like to move to suspend rules to act on this evening.
Councilor Witham moves that City Council rules be so far as suspended as to allow a second reading on Resolution 1924 this evening, seconded by Councilor Messier. The question before the council is on suspension of council rules. All those in favor, please state by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it, and City Council rules are so far as suspended. Chair recognizes the clerk for a second reading on Resolution 1924.
Resolution number 1924, to authorize the city manager to contract with CMA Engineers of Portsmouth, New Hampshire for engineering services for the design to reconstruct the west side sidewalk on High Street.
Resolution 1924, having been read a first and second time, is open to further amendment. No amendment be it offered, the chair will obtain a motion on Resolution 1924. Councilor Vincent.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to move on Resolution 1924 as read.
Councilor Vincent moves that Resolution 1924 be so far as adopted, seconded by Councilor Austin. Discussion. None being so, if you are in favor of the adoption of Resolution 1924, you will state by saying yes. If you are opposed, you will state by saying no. Chair recognizes the clerk to call the roll.
Councilor Pepin.
Yes.
Vincent.
Yes.
Gibson.
Yes.
Austin.
Yes.
Michaud.
Yes.
Witham.
Yes.
Girding.
Yes.
Cameron. Messier.
Resolution 1924 is adopted. Chair recognizes the clerk for a first reading on Resolution 2024.
Resolution number 2024, to authorize the city manager to prepare bid specifications to resurface a section of High Street and reconstruct the west side sidewalk on High Street from West High Street to South Street. October 23, 2023. Whereas the City of Somersworth's capital improvement plan recommends road resurfacing and other general maintenance of streets and sidewalk improvements throughout the city. And whereas the city has recently finished the improvements associated with the Transportation Alternatives Programs grant, which included reconstructing the east side sidewalk on High Street from West High Street to Franklin Street, and it would be in the best interest of the city to reconstruct a similar section of sidewalk on the west side of High Street. And whereas the Public Works and Environment Committee is recommending the city prepare bid specifications to contract for a mill and overlay of High Street from West High Street to South Street, and to reconstruct the west side sidewalk on High Street from West High Street to South Street, and to construct this work as a standalone bid project because of the need to complete engineering design work for the sidewalk. Now therefore be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Somersworth that the city manager is authorized to prepare bid specifications and solicit bids from qualified contractors to resurface the aforementioned section of High Street and reconstruct the aforementioned section of sidewalk on High Street, and take any other actions relative to this project determined to be in the best interest of the city. Sponsored by Councilors David A. Witham, Martin Pepin, Richard Michaud, approved City Attorney.
Resolution 2024 will remain in first reading until the next regular scheduled meeting. Brings us to agenda item under 17, which is closing comments by visitors. Any closing comments by visitors this evening? Please come forward, state your name, your address, and the ward you live in if you have that applicable information. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening. My name's Richard Brooks. I live at 18 Linden Street, Ward 1. I would just like to say thank you. I was amazed you suspended council rules to include the vote on my appointment to the ZBA, but I think it's a wise choice. Even with the nearly full membership, we often don't get full board member attendance, so thank you again for that. I do appreciate it, and I think it will help the city out. Obviously, I'm running for city council. I heard someone else mention it, so I might as well just throw that out there too. In doing so, I've spoken to some people around the community, and I've been made aware of some other things that I think are worth pointing out, especially seeing it relates to the National Guard property. Obviously, the National Guard Readiness Center was made to maintain and repair trucks and military equipment. And I also understand that we have in our CIP a larger public works building need sometime down the road. Don't know when that'll be, but I've found out that we have a fire truck that does not fit in our current public works building, but maybe it does in this National Guard place. We're getting handed a free building, so to speak. Maybe this would make a good public works location. Just something else to consider. There's obviously so many things to consider, and why rule anything out yet? But thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Any further closing comments by visitors? Any further closing comments by visitors?
Maggie Larson, community member and Somersworth School Board Chair. I think my best gratitude is to be brief and to thank you on behalf of the school board for the supplemental appropriation tonight, and to encourage all of you to reach out with any questions. I heard what you all said, what your questions were, and what we should focus on. You're always welcome to our meetings. You're part of the public as well, and to reach out. So thank you. And also I am a Hamilton Street resident, so I appreciate the work on the water tower, and all the public works efforts are really just incredible and wonderful. So thank you and good evening. Okay.
Any further closing comments by visitors? Any further closing comments by visitors? Now being so, that brings us to agenda item number 18, which is closing comments by councilors. And we'll start with Ward 1 Councilor, Councilor Pepin.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. The only comment I got tonight is I know you sent this into committee about the historical district. I just hope the committee would, this is what my proposal is, I hope the council would consider having a workshop jointly with the city council and the historical commission together. I would like to see a lot of their thoughts and stuff. I know it goes into committee, and I know you bring it back, but lots of times we don't have a chance to, if we're not on that committee, to have our answers and questions answered. So I would hope that you would consider having a joint workshop. I'd like to know what they're thinking of and the reasoning why. So that I hope. It's funny that we talk about water towers. I come up to the traffic lights there up by Dover and see that big water tower sticking up there. So that was kind of impressive today. I was shocked to see it popped up there. So that's all I have tonight.
Thank you, Councilor. Ward 2, Councilor. Councilor Vincent.
I have nothing.
Ward 3, Councilor. Councilor Gibson.
Nothing.
Ward 4, Councilor. Councilor Austin.
I do have a couple of comments. Thank you. Sorry, guys. Couple of things that have come to light over the last couple of weeks here as we continue to talk about how we spend our city's money. And I've gotten an inordinate number of complaints about sidewalks, and I guess that's nothing new. I think a lot of people complain about the sidewalks that run in front of their house and how they're not in the best of condition. And I realize we have a process in place to consider which sidewalks get done first, like we do with the streets. I just hope we keep monitoring that list on an ongoing basis, because I think that, certainly as we progress down this road, we got to get to some of those sidewalks in the less urban areas, if you will, that need to have some attention paid to them, whether they are, completely unwalkable at this point due to, tree roots and stuff like that, or grass or weeds or whatever. I think there's a number of sidewalks that are just plain unwalkable in the city. So I hope we don't lose sight of that, and only focus on sidewalks that are in the immediate downtown area here. I think that would be a mistake. And I do want to, Councilor Witham and I agree on many, many things, but I'm going to disagree with Councilor Witham on one of his comments this evening with regard to the supplemental appropriation. This should not be taken as purely an administrative procedure. I think anytime somebody asks the City Council to appropriate money for them, it's worthy of debate. It's worthy of us asking questions, and to do our homework, to do a complete examination on exactly what the supplemental appropriation will be used for. In the context of the school district, obviously, we only have the ability to approve the bottom line, as we've talked about many times. But I don't think it's just simply, an administrative procedure. Okay, the state appropriate, or the state sent additional adequacy aid money to the schools, so by instinct it just goes back to the school. I think it's a bigger issue than that. I am glad we had the debate we had this evening and came to the conclusion that we did. Thank you.
Ward 5, Councilor. Councilor Michu.
Yeah, thank you, Your Honor. What I have to say is I think 2 weeks from tomorrow is Election Day. I just want to encourage the citizens to get out and vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Moving to the at-large side. At-large, Councilor. Councilor Witham.
Councilor Austin, I should put on this hat because when I make a close, safe, or out call, half the people disagree with me. So I'm kind of used to that. I appreciate the comment, and your point's well made. Sidewalks, very interesting, if not for money, right? As you see tonight, we have the proposal for CMA engineers, which we adopted, $68,000 just to do the engineering, right? Truth be told, it costs as much to pave the same length of sidewalk as it does the same length of road. It's more complicated, so you're paying less for material and more for labor. So, we're spending $1 million a year on roads. We probably need to spend upwards of that on sidewalks, and we're only in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. So let's keep that in mind come budget time, right? So it's just an interesting conversation. Councilor Pepin, you stole my thought. Again, I plan to go to the HDC this Wednesday night, but I think if economic development recommends a meeting with the HDC, maybe that's a recommendation they could make. That might have some power behind it. I think that's an excellent idea. The comment was made tonight about a community engagement. I think that would help a lot. As I walked a lot of the areas in question this past yesterday, what's evident is that there's a lot of rental units in these areas as opposed to single-family homes. So just reaching out to, is it landlords or is it the residents of the apartments or both? I don't know, but it's a more complicated matter in these areas for sure. So, but I look forward to the continued dialogue. Thank you.
At-large Counselor, Counselor Girding.
Thank you, Your Honor. You all had your time to talk about the supplemental appropriation, and I didn't, so this is my chance. So bear with me. I apologize. I'm very.
You have 15 minutes, or I got to wait.
15 minutes. All right. I won't be that long. I promise. I just have a few thoughts I want to share. Where was I? Yeah, I appreciate the council passing it. I was certainly, as an educator, in favor of this all going back to the school, and it, in some sense, warmed my heart as someone who probably for his entire time as an educator has been fighting for increased adequacy from the state of New Hampshire, to see the number of people in our community who are educated on that issue, in particular that specific issue, and who came out and spoke about it. It shows that we as a council body we've been talking about it a bunch. We're certainly reaching folks and making them aware about how the state underfunds our schools. It seems like all the efforts that I've put in both my personal life and just my life here as a council member are not without or not for no avail, if you will. And folks are really paying attention. So I really appreciate the folks who came out and spoke about it. And I'm really thankful that it did in fact pass. Again, I've been thinking about how to frame the reasoning why I chose to recuse myself. I think it just comes down to this idea of perception. I feel like perception pervades this whole topic of the supplemental appropriation. There was a perception tonight that we were going to keep the money and spend it on other things. And I think that the perception is dangerous, and it is important, and it is to be listened to. And I hope that folks understand my reasoning was not that I had a direct conflict in this at all. I would not have financially benefited if I did in fact vote on this, but it has been made clear, I think, over the past many months, that there's a perception that staff in the school can have some sort of sway over decision-making and budgetary process. And so I was personally afraid that that perception would leak into, how this vote went forward. I didn't want to taint the vote. I didn't want, there to be any opportunity for folks to, if I did in fact vote for it, to look at that vote and say, hey, that one guy who's a teacher voted for it. Why did it pass? Is he the reason? And then ruin this whole relationship that we're building with the school board to give them the money to do these good things. And so I hope that that is clear, and I hope that there is a point where the perception of teachers being in the school board, or excuse me, being on the city councilor, or the mayor or wherever, I hope that perception kind of fades back, and we can actually have a point in which people understand that, just because I'm a teacher doesn't mean that I'm going around trying to get what I want from a budget. And I certainly listen to folks who say that they don't want me voting on things. That was why I stood out of this, is because I had heard it loud and clear from many people over the past months who stood there and said, we don't want that. And I don't want the gray area, and I didn't want to step on toes, and I just wanted this to be as clean as I could help make it be, and it was. And again, I thank all the counselors who unanimously supported it. So even if I did vote, it wouldn't have mattered. So that's also reassuring. But so thinking about this idea of perception, I do want to encourage the school board to look at some of the items that are in this supplemental appropriation that they've been talking about. And I want to make sure that again, I think at this point, as was requested, that we advocate for the things that we want. Chairman or Chairwoman Larson, you said, come talk to us and tell us what you want. I'm happy to do that now. Now that it's over to you all, some of the things that are in there, I would rather see replaced with some of the things that were talked about tonight. I wrote down a ton of things when I heard from people speaking, Fire alarm was an issue, ceiling panels, leaking roofs, high school bookshelves that might be damaged from leaking roofs, SRO, special ed, and the biggest one that I also have been thinking a lot about is lead in our water. And so lead is dangerous. I know none of them are in water fountains, or at least at the middle school. I read through the list of areas that had high counts of lead come back. They were not the water fountains, at least at the middle school. But it doesn't mean it's still not dangerous, and I don't think lead should be in any of our schools anywhere. And so that might be perceived to be a better priority than some of the other things. And I hope that the folks who came out and spoke tonight about their priorities are listened to, and I hope that I'm just excited to see how this money is going to benefit our students in our schools. So thank you, everybody, for voting for it. Thanks.
Thank you, Counselor. At-large Counselor Cameron.
Thank you, Anna. I'd just like to thank the community of all those people that came out tonight and spoke on behalf of what their concerns were with the supplemental appropriation. It means a lot that they did come out and kind of guided the course of where it ended up. So that was very enlightening tonight. 2 weeks from tomorrow is the election, so good luck to all the candidates, because we won't meet until after the elections are over. And happy Halloween, everybody.
Thank you, Counselor. At-large Counselor Messier.
Thank you, Your Honor. A couple of positive things. Community outreach. The fire department did a great job with Fire Week in working with the schools. The police department, Lights for Learning, the middle school, or his chief, and Idlehurst, school resource officer. I met him the other night. Can't remember his last name, South, whatever. So tell him thank you. And the highway department has a new paint job on the plow. I get these off Facebook somehow. So I want all those little things help in a full community where a child, whether it's at the schools with police officers, firefighters, or the highway department, interaction with them is a great thing. Stratford Regional Planning Commission, you heard what I said, for every $1 we give, we get 9 back. We should never lose sight of that. That's good. Concerning the realignment or whatever of the historical district, I think we need, Mr. Goodwin has a good point. If we're going to do it, let's incorporate some of the concerned parties in those districts. It's not really going to sway me. I'm more for shrinking it, doing away with all of it. I don't see any. People don't come to Somersworth to look at an old house. So that, you can believe that, you cannot believe that, but I don't see people coming to town for that. And plus, we're going to have multiple reiterations of these proposals. So all the outreach you can do, so that's wonderful. I did get a complaint this weekend concerning roosters within town. I will get with planning or whatever. We just approved chickens.
Roosters are not allowed.
Okay. Well, then I have a complaint, and I will give it to Michelle. Thank you. That's all I got.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Gibson moves that the City Council stand in adjournment, seconded by Counselor Michoud. The question before the Council is on adjournment. All those in favor, please state by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nope. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it, and the City Council stands adjourned.